Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my Sunday live stream where we talk about photography, catch up with the community, see how everybody's doing. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. And yeah, so today you know, I I went out with the photo club yesterday. We have regular meetups every week, and it's always a great time to get out and hang out with other photographers and I spend a lot of my time, I try anyway, to help others there with their settings or technique, whatever, best I can. Most of the photographers they're already pretty well experienced and don't need anything from me. If anything, I learn from them, right? In a lot of cases, and it just kind of reminded me there was a brand new member there that was just getting started in photography, and a couple of things kind of struck me this week about people that are buying cameras, for the first time, and or upgrading their existing camera. And I tell you, um, it's kind of it's kind of all over the place. And Walter sent me um, an email this morning about a very common topic where smartphones have pretty much taken over. Entry level cameras are virtually gone, and but Leicas, which are very expensive, are, back ordered, sold out, etc. I mean, the post that he sent me was from a well-known photographer, and something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Uh, but when a post lacks any specifics, data points for me to follow, I try not to dive or read too much into it because everybody has an opinion, and when you make a very short statement like that, it's very generalized and it's really one man's opinion, which everything is like my own, just one man, one opinion, right? But oh, I'm sorry, you hear an echo? Anyone else hear an echo? Let me know. Let me make sure I got the right microphone set up. Oh, yeah, it should be right. Okay, yeah. It looks like the microphone's right. I noticed in the stream the other day, my there was a lot of clipping or static in the audio, so let me know if you hear that today too as well. I'll try and resolve that. I It's hard for me to diagnose it when I'm not actually live streaming, so let me know that as well. But kind of going back to what I was saying is, I like more specifics, right? Like, when you say entry level camera, are you talking about like the point and shoots? Certainly, those are virtually gone. You can't find any. But cameras like the Canon R100, the Canon R50 are top sellers, right? Uh, as far as mirrorless cameras go, relative to smartphones, it's probably still very, very small fraction, right? But also compact cameras, these very cheap ones that you can buy for 25, 30, up to 50 to $100. All of them are the same thing basically. They're all crap, but uh, those are selling like hotcakes, right? These entry level, and these are cameras that are not tracked by anybody, right? So I think if you factor in, and I'm just guessing, right? I don't have any numbers to support this, but I'm not so sure that entry level cameras are really not selling, because when you look at the bestseller cameras on Amazon, these little tiny $50 compacts are, and I have one. Uh, I've shown this before in past streams, but it's like one of these things, right? This is my Canon. and these are selling for like 300 bucks for some reason, on eBay. So the used market, these things demand is pretty high for no reason, in my opinion. But the demand is pretty high for these things. But that's a little bit of a supply demand issue, right? Because since they're not making these anymore, there's less supply, so price is going to go up. But the fact that it's going up shows there is demand, and demand for these things. I paid like $30 for this. I got one of my, my deals that I do every week. I found a deal on one of these, and yeah, so this was kind of cool. The pictures are crap, but it does take pictures. The LCD display is actually not bad. Let me see if this turns on. But I no, it's dead. I'll charge it up during the stream. Uh, yeah. But anyway, and a few weeks ago, someone else in our photo club bought, upgraded from a Sony, like an A6000 series. I don't know which one she had, to an OM5 with the 12 to 40, which it was made me so happy because I know she got a great, great camera. And in my opinion, better than the Sony she was using. But yesterday, this person, she had only had her camera a few days or a week. I mean, she just got it, and this was probably one of her first outings uh, to use this camera. She had bought a Canon T7, a little compact DSLR, hot seller on Amazon because they're selling like 400 or 500 bucks with the lens or two, right? And what I noticed was is and she loved it. She loved going out for the walk into the park and listening to the birds singing and just enjoying the time being there, but also taking enjoying her time with her camera. And she was so excited, using this little camera, and that was great to see. Uh, so I said, "Oh, let me see your camera. Maybe I can give you a couple of tips, right?" Because she didn't have any idea how to use a camera, and she had her mode dial set to landscape, but she didn't even know. It's like she just probably turned the dial and just said, "I don't see any difference when I'm changing the dial from one to the other," and probably left it on one. But she had to set the landscape, which generally is going to apply a very vivid profile to the JPEGs. And she had the JPEG set to medium, basically default settings. Uh, but she didn't care, right? And I thought to and I said, okay, just put it in A mode and just get a feel for taking pictures using the camera instead of your smartphone. Uh, and generally your images will be fine, right? And it got me thinking, uh, why make photography hard, right? Because if I started talking about aperture priority or exposure compensation or you know um, depth of field, all this stuff, using focus points, different types of focus, shutter modes, continuous shutter. A lot of that is, I don't know, to somebody brand new like that, it's just noise. And she can just put the camera in intelligent auto mode, right? There was an auto mode there, which is different than P mode. P mode is basically auto, but there's also an auto mode, which takes away all control over settings, and the camera just tries to figure it out for you, and it does okay, you know. So I all I did was I put it in A mode and said, this is probably better than just choosing landscape, right? Or whatever you had, because she had no idea. I think, like I said, she probably turned the dial, took a couple pictures in each mode and didn't see any difference. So, um, anyhow, uh, so my point is, and is let's not make photography hard. Let's not, you know, dive into all of the different things that many of us that have been shooting a while, are understand, right, about photography. and just let people go out and enjoy using a real camera, right? And I feel like that's what smartphones do, right? It just lets people just enjoy the uh, action of just taking a picture, right? And being able to share it quickly. So have is there a comeback to entry level compact cameras? I wonder, right? Because like I said, we can look on the shelf at any store, and we won't find these legit compact cameras too much anymore, if at all. Versus, these this little pocket $50 camera, which are selling like hotcakes on Amazon, relatively speaking, to regular DSLRs. Because when you look at these selling 3, 4, 5,000 per month versus say a Canon R100, which might sell 500 pieces a month, like a fraction of what those are selling for. And those are not counted. I guarantee those are not counted in any camera stats. Um, but I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I think I saw a comment here about TikTok, but let me get to the chat section before I get too much further along. Uh, and then I have a little bit more. Let's see. Here we go. See who's in here. I see Marco's here, David Tellett, Roger. Good to see you guys. Um, Jeff Painter, always good to see you. Joanne, John Langston, Brian Phillips, Wayne Cox. Good to see everybody. I'm so glad you're here with me this morning. And I see Lasse is here. And I, uh, I don't see any particular questions. Any K1 Pentaxians here? Yeah, the Pentax cameras, very good cameras. And sound is good. Plato's here. Um, okay, so I think I'm here. No echoes, and this is a new person, Semjon. How are you, Sem? Or Semjon? Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Just want to say thank you for the great tutorials. I recently bought the first proper camera OM5 with the 12 to 45 Pro. New at a good price for a little over 1,000. It's super fun to learn. Yeah, it's a great camera. Probably the most appropriate tutorials are like the EM1 Mark III tutorials that I have, and the EM5 Mark III is close enough, but the EM1 Mark III is a little bit closer, I think, in terms of feature sets and performance, because the OM5 has Starry Sky AF and it has handheld high-res shot mode, things like that. So the EM1 Mark III might be a better way to go. Uh, but yeah, I'm glad you got. And like I was saying earlier, you got a fantastic camera. It does everything, and it does it well. The only thing I wish you had was USB-C, but that's kind of a minor thing. In practice, how often do you really need to use USB-C? Because I always recommend charging the battery. So buy a charger separately. You can get any generic charger, and generally try to charge your batteries separately from the camera. But USB-C uh, does give some other benefits for data, like if you want to use your camera as a webcam without going through an HDMI port, things like that. Oh, and this side towards screen says, my niece is into TikTok thing and digicams are hot. Wow. Yeah. See, I think a lot of kids are buying these cameras because they're cheap and they're kind of cool, right? Because they don't do anything but take a picture. And that's kind of unique in a way, right? And Semjon says there's quite a big market for old digicams. Before I got my own 5 recently, I used a Panasonic Lumix LC1. Wow. From 2004. Sold it for £500. Wow. That is shot. Okay. I got to look at what that is. Lumix LC1. Interesting. $500. That's no kidding. Um, this guy here. That is a cool little camera. It's got a Leica lens on it, f2 to 2.4. Wow, 5 megapixels. That is shocking. This looks like a precursor to the LX100 that I just bought. Wow, what a lovely camera. Look at that lens. That's legit. Wow, that's awesome. That is awesome. I never heard of that camera, but that is awesome. That does have a very familiar look to it though, uh, as my LX100. Okay, wow. Well, I'm just floored by that something like that selling. I mean, that should be like a $50 camera, right? To anybody that buys cameras, I would pay 50 bucks for that. But the problem is it's hard to find cameras like that anymore. So that's why I bought an LX100. An LX100 Mark One would have been better than that camera, I think, you know. And it costs less. You can get those for 400, 500 maybe. And then I saw a comment section, someone who said he was virtually ostracized for his camera club because he was shooting JPEGs. That's yeah, that's I mean, it depends how bad. I mean, if you're just uh if there's just a little bit of banter, that's always a lot of fun, right? So if he knew that those people, a little friendly banter, it's no big deal. Walter's always, razzing on me about my micro foot calling them toy cameras, right? And I'm always calling his camera a tank because it's just so big and heavy. Um, and anyway, so it's okay. You always have to take it in context. But I have heard of people getting flack for shooting JPEG, which, you know, well, so what? I mean, so what if you shoot JPEG? How different is that than shooting RAW and just exporting them, right? With a minor edit. Uh, the camera might do a better job at processing than you would, you know? Um, yeah, I don't like that though. I mean, if somebody wants to go out and take pictures, whether it's a smartphone or entry level camera and shoot JPEGs, I think that's awesome. Go out and enjoy. Shutter therapy, so they speak. Shutter therapy sounds like, you're really stressed out and you need to get out and shoot to kind of relax, right? Which is totally true. And I love that term that Robin Wong has kind of coined. Um, but I like to think of it as just it's like any other hobby that you can go out and enjoy. Uh, okay. So put the camera in P mode and learn to see. Yep, that's a very good point. And that's the other thing is really the camera and gear and how it captures the image has very little to do with photography itself. Photography or the art of photography, learning to see, finding the light, looking for compositions, things like that, I think are the hardest part, right? I still struggle every day. I'm kind of coming into my zone of how I like to shoot. Uh, but I still don't have like any kind of unique style or signature to my images that people can look at and say, yeah, Rob took that picture, right? I'm not like what's his name, David Avedon or whatever that used to do those portraits. If you look at any of his portraits, you know right away, uh, you have a strong inclination it was shot, that's one of his photos or in the style of his photography. Uh, the guy was amazing. Sadly, he passed away, 10 years ago, I think. Uh, Too soon. And this side towards screen says there's several approaches to photography, art or pro, hobby enthusiast, snapshot, nothing wrong, all can exist together, but there will be separation between them. Yeah, we're all different people, right? We all have different motivations and find joy in different ways of photography, different ways of enjoying photography. So, for a lot of us, it's just the act of getting out into some fresh air, going for a walk, and then taking a few pictures along the way. That's and the photography is more of an accent to your journey than it is the primary purpose, right? Which is kind of the feeling I was getting yesterday from the new member was she spent a lot of her time just enjoying being out and listening to the birds sing and watching, you know, uh, uh, them kind of swimming, the ducks and geese in the water. And it was, the photography was kind of afterthought, right? Oh, let me take a picture of this. Whereas when I go out, when I'm trying to take a picture of something, uh, I'm thinking heavily about composition and story and all of that stuff. And or if I'm testing something, trying to see the limits of the camera and how it behaves with certain situations. And then I end up taking a lot of stupid shots. But when I review them, I can look at them and say, okay, in this kind of lighting situation, in this focusing mode or this ISO, whatever I'm testing for, I want to understand the performance of the camera and what it's going to do so that when I go out next time with that camera, I can optimize the image quality that I'm getting in addition to, um, what can I react to? Because some cameras, like the OM1, if something's happens, I can very quickly just bip the camera up and take a photo, right? Uh, Whereas like my TG5, yeah, there's a little bit of a lag there. It's not like when you push the shutter button, it doesn't take a picture, but it's not going to focus as quick. Uh, it's not going to, the tracking and finding things in the frame, it's not going to do very well. It can take a little while because it's just a little pocket camera, right? But the other thing I noticed was the one key thing missing in the TG5s. It needs a shutter mode, shutter priority. I mean, you can kind of work around it with, bumping your ISO up manually and taking a few test shots to get the exposure right at that ISO and the shutter speed that you want. But yeah, if it would just had a simple shutter priority mode, it made things so much easier. Um, okay, let's see. And Wayne says a $30 camera is less than the cost of a trip to McDonald's. Oh my God. I know, right? And Joanne says, don't forget to click the like. I appreciate that. And good morning, George. And John is asking, anyone use the photo app on their Mac to edit JPEGs? I find it's pretty useful for simple edits. I don't shoot. I don't have Apple. I have an iPad, but I don't use it for any photography stuff really. But any simple editing app, just to crop, adjust the brightness, saturation. There's a lot of free ones out there that if you just want to do very simple edits, uh, you don't have to buy photo editing software. And Darko says, "You wish Nikon made a PenF rangefinder. Isn't that the Nikon? Oh, it's not really. But I was thinking of the Z30. It's kind of rangefinder style, but there's no EVF. So I guess that kind of makes it not rangefinder style. But it is because there's no hump for the EVF, right? That's about the closest thing they have, I guess. Uh, And some feedback on the LC1. Okay. Oh, this from Simjon was nice. Great black and white mode. And it's the same like a Digilux 2 from Panasonic as a Leica Digilux 2, but super slow and only usable in bright light because of ISO 800. Yeah. Yeah, ISOs didn't go very high early on in digital cameras. Like my E300 only goes, I think, to 3200, and that's extended, right? It's like, anyway, I can't remember. And 90% of the content being viewed on phone screens, the 5 megapixel and up images are perfectly fine. Yes, I would agree with that. Um, I would even say 2 megapixels, to be honest, because that's what I deliver to my clients generally are two to 4 megapixel images. What I do when I export the images, I just say make the longest side or the shortest side 2000 megapixels and 4:3 aspect ratio. The other side is, closer to 3000. So it's about a 6 megapixel image, I guess. It depends. I used to deliver 1080, 1080 by 19, whatever it worked out to be. But I felt like that was getting a little bit too small more recently. So this year or late last year, I switched to delivering double that. I shot an event yesterday, JPEG LSF on my own one Mark II yesterday, and the shots were great. Yeah, I've done that. I went to a photo job and I forgot to change it to RAW because I do a lot of exposure blending and all of that, right, for architectural stuff. And got home and I was like, oh crap, these are all JPEGs, you know, and they're perfectly fine. I didn't have the latitude I kind of enjoy with RAW, but the final delivery was what I delivered was fine. And Semjon says it's about the picture, and if you're having fun, unless you're a pro, it doesn't really matter what you use. I think there's nothing worse than a sharp image of a fuzzy subject. That's funny. Um, from Ansel Adams, one of the greats. I Yeah, professionals, the camera becomes a tool and it has to do certain things, right? So, um, you're not worried about the image quality because you should be at a level where image quality is not the issue, right? You can get a good image with just about any camera or, modern camera for sale. You're looking for specific features and tools of that camera. Uh, whether it's, shooting in manual mode or high speed capture, great autofocus, whatever your priority is. Like for me, face detect and eye autofocus is extremely low priority for 90% of my jobs, right? Because I do events time to time, and that's when face detect is more important. And the OM1 certainly does a good job with that. Uh, I just bought a grip for it. Actually, where is that? Because I was thinking I'm going to be doing more vertical. Because a lot of OM stuff is on sale right now. A lot of lenses and the grip is $100 off. It's like $250 now, which I was looking for them used, and they were asking like that or more. And then when I checked more recently, they were selling for just under $250. So I was like, why would I buy a used one? I can get brand new. And Richard Avedon, I work with his grand. Oh, really? Wow. Well, we'll have to talk about that later. You never mentioned that before. That's pretty cool. Um, it reminds me of the old adage, 6 degrees of separation, right? That's only 3 degrees for me, right? There's Walter, then Avedon, or 2 degrees. And System Mature says, you learn to see. I tend to use WYSIWYG and mostly manual mode. Get out and have fun and enjoy yourself. Yeah. That's the most that I got out of yesterday was sometimes Because at first, when I saw her looking up in the trees and smiling and listening to the birds singing, wondering what kind of bird that was, my initial reaction was, you have an 18 to 55 lens and you have a tiny bird about 200 feet up in the air, or maybe 100 feet, right? In this tree. And my first reaction was, and I didn't say it out loud, right? But I was thinking it. I was thinking it. I was thinking it. Uh, that bird's too far away. You're not going to get a picture of that. Just keep going, keep moving, right? Why are you stopping to take a picture of that? And then it hit me, you know, she's not even really holding her camera ready to take a picture. She just has it kind of down low and just listening and looking around. I was like, I was the one missing the point now, right? Of the whole point of going out and shooting with a photo club is to go out and just enjoy your time there. Uh, and that's kind of what prompted my topic today was I sometimes I just make photography hard, right? Myself. Uh, and then once I've kind of overcome that challenge, then I move on to another challenge. I'm always like in this constant learning mode, whether it's learning about the behavior of the camera or learning about photography itself, right? And very rarely do I go out to just enjoy walking around and being outside, getting some exercise. I mean, it's relaxing in of itself, but that isn't the goal of my outing. The goal of my outing usually has a very specific purpose, right? I got to try this camera. I got to try this lens. I want to do some flash photography. I want to work with the macro capabilities, whatever. It's like I'm thinking about a very specific thing. And this conversation came up during the breakfast we had afterwards. And thank you again, David. David Teller bought me a latte for my breakfast yesterday. I'm so fortunate. People are so generous when we're out, and I do appreciate it. But uh, now I lost my train of thought thinking about breakfast. It's yeah. I have some reason I'm going out, and it's usually very very deliberate. But during the conversation during breakfast, we were talking about Nikon lenses, particularly the 28 to 400. And I had looked at that lens, on behalf of someone, and I said I recommended not to get it in the end. Despite a lot of great reviews, there's always a lot of hype when something brand new comes out, how great it is. But what's not really emphasized is relative to other lenses of its ilk, right? So if you look at other super zoom lenses, the 28 to 400 is top tier when it comes to super zoom, like 10x. This thing is a 15x roughly, right? Uh, yeah, it's better than the rest. But does it compare to, say, a telephoto prime? No. And unfortunately, Nikon doesn't have like a strong telephoto prime that's within reason, right? Budget. Because that 28 to 400 is like 1,200 bucks or something. And then you get into the primes and you're hitting 10 grand pretty quickly. I mean, they have a 300 f4, which is pretty reasonable, but that's not really enough reach for the kind of photography he was talking about, which is birding. Uh, but I feel like that person was in a place or point in their photography. They shouldn't be looking at super zooms. I think super zooms are great for people getting started, let you get out there and do everything. Uh, if you're just trying to enjoy the craft, if you really want to learn the craft, then my recommendation would be different. And this person is in a position that he wants to learn the craft, right? And take better pictures. And in his situation, I would say you need to get a prime, get a telephoto prime, maybe the 300 f4. But Start looking at primes and just forget about the zooms. I mean, zoom lenses are great; they're nice, all-purpose. But I felt like this person. So my recommendations a lot of times are seem to contradict each other, but it's always the foundation of my recommendation is usually based on what does the photographer want to do, what's their level of skill, you know, and uh, and budget, of course, right? I mean, why spend a fortune if they're just starting out? I'll never recommend a high end lens. I'm going to say buy the $200 lens, the 50 millimeter f1.8, and buy the kit zoom, which is in the in the 40 to 150 range, or that sort of thing. That a full frame be 24 to 105. Get these kit zooms because the 24 to 105 on Canon is like $300 used, $400 brand new, and it's a great range to get started with in full frame, 24 to 105, or uh, the kit lenses we get with our cameras are fine on the Micro Four Thirds, the 14 to 42. But then, when you get more kind of an intermediate level, I feel like, yeah, you need to start looking at some little more serious glass, something that you're going to invest in. Because he's been shooting, I've known him for a couple of years now. So he's been shooting a couple of years. So he's not like in it and then out within a few months, like a lot of people. They buy a camera, they use it for a little while, then it sits on the shelf, right? Uh, so I think in his situation, I would recommend start buying primes. Stop buying these zoom lenses. It's a hard transition for some, right? To go from using a zoom lens to going to just a prime. But it's going to, as many of you know, it's going to force you to start to consider the composition and things that are in the frame because you can't change it. Wherever you're standing, you're going to have one field of view, right? So, what elements can you put together in that field of view and make a nice composition? And if you need to change your field of view, you need to move, which makes you explore the scene, right? And walk around. So, all that good stuff, right? And then very advanced photographers, I'm usually the one asking questions. What do you do for this? How do you do that? Uh, but I still consider myself kind of an intermediate photographer. I'm still learning. None of my techniques, I haven't mastered anything. So more of a jack of all trades. I've done a little bit of everything and I do it okay, but I'll never master anything. Um, and Joanne says composition is my weakness, and that would be my recommendation. If you have a prime lens, more standard prime, 40, 50 millimeter, or if you're using Micro Four Thirds, you want to be like a 20, 25 millimeters, even 15 millimeters, 14 millimeters is fine. But start going out, and if you don't have a prime, just set your zoom lens to one focal length and stick to it. You can put a little painter's tape around the zoom so you can't change it when you go out if that helps. I see, I don't think you need to do that, but if you need to force yourself to keep the zoom in one position, that would be one way to do it. Uh, but yeah, just go out with a single lens, single focal length, I should say, and work with the composition that you see wherever you're standing. And if there's not a good composition there, right, I would spend 5-10 minutes in one spot and look for a composition, and then eventually you'll see one. Hopefully, sometimes you won't, right? But you'll get there. Like yesterday, Shri, I don't know if Shri is here. He comes into the streams pretty regular, and he goes to the photo clubs. But there was a thingamajig up in the tree, woodpecker, and and there was a bare branch. There was no leaves on the tree. It's just a nice thick bare branch that the woodpecker was kind of hanging on and moving around. I said, okay. And I walked over and I said, stand right here, right here. And then wait for the woodpecker to come out onto the edge of the branch because you can get a picture of them now, but it's not a nice picture. He's kind of just on the branch. He's not sticking out of the branch. So it's I'm having a hard time articulating the scene. But I said, wait for the woodpecker to go out more towards the edge of the branch so he's standing up and you have a nice clear line of sight to that woodpecker alone. And then if you're standing right here, you know, there was a full moon, right? Uh, right there. And you could frame it so that the branch is hanging over this way, and you could frame the full moon right underneath it, and then the woodpecker right there. I was like, that would be the perfect shot, right? At least that's what I thought. And he was just flabbergasted, and I said, and he just couldn't see it. So I said, okay, let me take your camera because I brought my TG5 with me yesterday, and I said, let me get a shot for you. So this is what I'm talking about, this shot right here. And he just couldn't understand, how did you get the moon framed like in the shot like that? I was like, you got to stand right here, right here. um, but see, that's what I mean is when you use a prime lens, it forces you to move and try and frame and arrange the elements in the scene in a way that you can get a nice image, and that's how you can improve your composition. Um, and all of these rules, like rules of thirds, Fibonacci circles, leading lines, these are all good to know and apply when you're struggling with finding compositions. I think they're fine if you want to learn these up front. Like rule of thirds is probably the only one you really need to learn and practice. I think you get a feel for space, right? It forces you to look at this one third, this one. It forces you to look at the scene in thirds, uh, and break the scene up into its different elements. Uh, but and then all the other things, leading lines is another good one to kind of pay attention to. Leading lines are really good, but you have to pay attention to your corners. So, I mean, I don't want to get into full on course about composition, right? Uh, but the foundation to good composition or learning composition, I think, is using a prime lens and forcing yourself and stay in that one position for 5-10 minutes. If you're there for more than 5 or 10 minutes, you're not seeing it. There might be a scene there, but just you're not seeing it. So move on until you find something uh, that you can shoot within 5 or 10 minutes, because uh, it's just going to be frustrating, right? I've gotten to the point where I'm very, very patient. I might sit in a scene for a half an hour waiting for something or looking for something. Like I'll see one or two elements that I really like. Like I might like the reflection of the trees off of the water in this one scene. And then I said, what would be perfect if a bird or a duck just kind of swam right next to this particular reflection, and the background is lit. So I'm waiting, right, basically, for a scene, which I totally failed to do yesterday. But uh, things like that. So sometimes it does take a long time, particularly when you're talking about wildlife and using wildlife in your compositions. You might want to spend a lot more time waiting for that perfect moment. Sometimes it's about watching the behavior of the birds and bees, right? Because a lot of times, like even bees, I've noticed they'll come back to the same flower several times, which I always found very interesting. And I'll wait and I'll focus on that one flower and I'll just wait, sometimes 10-15 minutes before that bee or another bee comes back to that flower. And birds, a lot of times you'll see them pattern where they'll land on the same branch every time, right? Or they'll go in a certain pattern. Uh, things like that. So wildlife and nature, you can spend a lot more time waiting for that composition. But if you're doing street photography, architecture, things are moving a little bit too fast sometimes with street photography, and that's a real challenge to find a good composition for street. Architecture, buildings and things, you want to think about lines and angles, geometry, depth, right? You want to have depth into your image. Uh, so find something that you enjoy, looking at in terms of photography and what you want to aspire to be able to capture. And then when you go out in your own photography, on your own photo walks, try to apply the elements that you saw in the photos that you like to your own photography, and then eventually come up with your own style. But don't worry if you don't. It's fine if you want to copy everybody for now and just learn all the different techniques. But eventually, you'll find your own style. And I'm still struggling. I'm getting there. I got a few elements I like to put together consistently, but I still don't have a specific style. So I remember when I still use Canon APS-C camera, and I was told, "Why Canon? You should have Nikon." I know it just doesn't matter. And that brings me to another thing was, excuse me, a friend of mine called me Friday or chat. I chatted with her Friday, and she wanted to upgrade her Canon. She had a 90D, I think it was a Mark II, but it's a DSLR, not too old, decent camera. But she wanted to upgrade to a mirrorless, and she um, she sent me a few links to what she was looking at, and she wanted to go from like this Canon 90D, which is like it's $1,000 DSLR, to Canon R5 Mark II, the 70 to 24 to 72.8 and 100 to 500 telephoto zoom, right? It's like $10,000. I was like, you ain't kidding around, man. You got a $10,000 budget. Okay. I said, you can save about $4,000 and get pretty much the same thing with a Nikon system, right? And you can save probably $6,000, well, let's say 5,000, and get an OM system camera, right? That will do pretty much the same thing. In addition to being smaller, lighter, all of the good stuff of Micro Four Thirds, right? Uh, Not interested at all. Okay. Um, yeah, I'm getting a text from them right now, actually. So, not interested at all in these other recommendations. She's like, I'm familiar with Canon and I want to stay with Canon. I said, okay, there you go. So I steered her away from the 24 to 70, and I said, get the 24 to 105 f4 as a kit with the camera. The lens is more versatile, um, and it's just as sharp, right? You're not going to really see much difference between that and, if any, between that and the 24 to 72.8. Uh, and the 100 to 500, and you're done, right? And she saved about $1,500 doing it that way, or about $1,000 doing it that way, if I recall, because we were at like $9,500, and then I rearranged the kit, and it was down to about 8,500. And then but that includes like SD cards, CF Express card reader, uh, and that was it. Because she had no idea memory cards were so expensive, because I was like, with that camera, you got to get the fastest CF Express B cards and the fastest UHS-2 V90 card. Uh, I could have steered her towards maybe a V60 card, but because that camera shoots, 8K, uh, the V90 card is going to be able to perform. It probably wouldn't do 8K video, but it's going to perform better on all the other specs, and certainly in the 6 and 4K range, a V90 card can handle. So, uh, anyway, I made that recommendation, but yeah, some people, and the person that was new yesterday, bought the Canon T7 because her friend is a professional photographer and uses Canon, and he said, just buy Canon. I would have told her to buy Canon R100 if I was going to buy Canon rather than a T7. So that way you're at least in mirrorless and you're not losing anything, you're gaining, in my opinion. But uh and it's the same money or less for an R100 versus the T7, and the R100 is a much better camera. But anyway, and that's what I'm finding is I wouldn't call it brand loyalty, but people are getting recommended cameras from other people based on what they're already shooting. And Canon having the largest market share, and Sony more or less the same, right? This is where I'm seeing a lot of entry level cameras coming in, or entry level photographers coming in and buying cameras. They're buying them based on what their friend is using, or if they already had an older one, they buy the same brand and they're moving up. And it's fine, right? Because ultimately the gear doesn't matter. Um, for people like me and a lot of people, we enjoy. I'm very brand loyal, so to speak. I'm more format loyal. Like I because I like all the benefits that Micro Four Thirds offers. uh, but so I'm always going to look and shop Micro Four Thirds cameras before any other system, because I only have like one Sony. Well, I have the NEX. I have one Nikon. I'm such a liar. When I think about it, I got a lot of Nikons, but I only have two Sonys. I got one Fuji, and I'm talking about interchangeable lens cameras. And but I have multiple Olympus cameras, and and I have one Panasonic. I'd like to get a couple more Panasonics in the Micro Four Third range. Mm. Okay, and let's see. And John says, I've seen several DxO Photolab videos on YouTube recently. Are they marketing through content creators? Absolutely. Yeah, they have certain ambassadors for the thing, like Photo Joseph, and actually Micro Four Third shooter. I forget his name, but he's a wildlife shooter, and and a couple others. I think they speak different languages though. But there's a Micro Four Thirds ambassador. He's also ambassador, I think, for DxO, a wildlife shooter, and then of course Photo Joseph, which does a lot of Lumix Panasonic stuff, but also uses DxO. And then, of course, there's lots of affiliates like me and Peter, Maddie. I've seen their videos. Well, I've seen the thumbnails for their videos. I haven't watched it yet. They sent me a copy of DxO Photolab 8 about a week before it was actually launched. But I had a photo job, my two photo video jobs in that week. So I didn't have time to really uh, use it, and certainly I didn't have time to make a video about it. I would have liked to and try and capture some of that initial, excitement, but it doesn't matter. I rarely release a video right when a product is launched. Usually, I need a little more time to get a feel for it. But yeah, a lot of companies are like I just saw. David Teller was telling me yesterday. Frickin' Thomas Heaton and Jane Popsy's Hasselblad sent them free X2Ds or whatever. I was like, what? Just sent them the camera? Man, I didn't get that email. uh, wow, that was really very generous of them. So they're definitely people are marketing, companies are marketing through content creators like myself uh, for their products. So there seems to be a market for it because a lot of times the content creator will do it for free, right? Um, I can charge for some of the reviews that I do, like 500, $1,000 per review, but I choose not to. I say, just send me the product, and I'll do a review on it. Because when you're paid to do a review and getting the product is sort of getting paid in a way, right? Depending on the value of the product. Uh, and from a tax standpoint, you are being paid, right? It's in like kind exchange. But, you know, I'm not getting actually paid dollars, right? So but when you're paid money, you have to put the best possible spin on the product, right? And if you're just given the product to review, generally, I would hope they try to give a very honest opinion about the product. At the same time, you do have some, since you have a rapport with the vendor or manufacturer, uh, you don't want to just trash the product, right? And usually, it's hard for me to trash products based on price point because I'll get a product like I'll get a lens that sells for like $150, and I'll be like, if it sucks, if it just totally sucks, uh, I'll say, yeah, it's a little weak. You know, it doesn't do this, doesn't do that, whatever. Um, but I'm not going to come out and say this is complete garbage, right? Um, but a lot of times, more recently, the lenses. I have one lens that's not great that I haven't done a review on. I gotta think about my wording on that. It doesn't suck by any means because the price point's pretty reasonable. Nothing sucks when you're only paying 100, $200 for a product in photography world, right? It's just a matter of you get what you pay for a lot of times. Uh, and a lot of products, some of the products I get is basically it's worth what you pay for it. It's not a pro lens, you know. Anyway, long story short, a lot of companies are marketing through content creators like myself. I've turned down so many recently. I'm just kind of tired of doing them. I'll do a flash or a lens. I'm starting to think I don't want to do lens reviews anymore. So we'll see. I know I've turned down even some Godox products that I wasn't interested in. Certainly a lot of lighting products I've turned down. These LED lights for studio. Um, Once in a while, if it's really compact, I might like to review it. But I was offered a big honkin' studio, professional grade lamp, and I was like, that's okay. Nobody that watches my channel cares about big studio lamps. I'm not like a hardcore videography with a big studio where I can demonstrate the practical applications of this light, its durability. I don't have a ton of experience using that kind of gear. So I turned it down. And this side towards the end picked up a Pentax X5. It is a super zoom bridge camera, 16 megapixel tilt screen, EVF JPEG only. There's limits with the zoom lens, but having it as an all-in-one, I love it. Yeah, I love the all-in-ones. Just to beat around. My TG5 is like an all-in-one. It's great. Uh, and Barry's here. Good to see you. And then lastly, I watched Chris Wright's tutorial of the PL8, and so I know what to expect in the new version. It has some nice updates. Definitely some significant updates. I mean, Photolab 6 had was a big. If you're on an older version of Photolab 6, I think it's time to upgrade. But if you have Photolab 6, it depends. If you're happy with Photolab 6, probably don't need Photolab 8. But if you're a heavy user of Photolab products in general, Photolab 8 has some very nice upgrades. If you're a heavy user, like you're using it 5 out of 6, 5 out of 7 days, every day basically, you're using Photolab for editing your photos, I think it's definitely worth an upgrade. Buying it brand new, it depends, right? If you're buying DxO for the first time, a lot of things have to come into play there. Um, because it doesn't do layering, HDR, panoramas, stacking, a lot of more niche type photography stuff, but it doesn't do a lot of things that something like Photoshop Elements does. Now, ultimately, the output quality is not as good in Adobe products, in my opinion. I think Photolab does a way better, not way better, but does a better job at processing the photos, demosaicing, optical corrections, denoising, all of that stuff. I think it's superior to anything else I've ever tried. But that may not be that critical, right? May not be that critical to you. You might be fine with just Darktable, the free, photo editor. It's you can denoise enough, you can edit enough, and have a lot of flexibility with that, where you don't care about getting the absolute cleanest high ISO image, right? If the image was very noisy, uh, if you can denoise it a little bit, you're fine, right? Maybe DX08 it doesn't make sense, but I love a lot. I'll have to do a video on DxO and talk about why I like DxO products in general, and who I think Photolab 8 would make sense for, right? And John says, I got my new 40 to 150 f2.8 Pro on sale for cheaper than, yeah, it's crazy, right? There's such good deals on the Olympus products right now. I've been pushing the 8 to 25. Ironically, is a lens that I'm not going to buy, but if I was looking for a wide angle lens, I'm not buying it because that's a lot of money to spend on a lens. Even it's like selling for $659 right now, which is like $400 off the list price. Uh, it's 40% off. Because I have the 7 to 14 from Panasonic. It's not as good as the 8 to 25, but it's fine, you know. And but if I didn't have the 7 to 14 already, I would buy the 8 to 25 right now, because having a wide angle to more normal 25 millimeter range is pretty useful. And I don't hesitate recommending that lens all day long if you don't have a wide angle lens already. Um, something wider than 12, that is, because 8 really opens up that sky for doing astrophotography and things like that. So I took some of the best photos when I just started. Now I've become too critical and hard on myself. I guess I'll never get over that period. I guess I'll get over that period one day. Yeah, I'm the same way. We're all our own harshest critic, right? If we really want to improve our photography, we're looking at it and says, damn. Like I was looking at some photos yesterday that I took. Let me see if I can share those. I'll pull this up in a minute. Um, there's another comment here. Simjan, are there any original OM grips that allow access to the battery? I couldn't find one. I ended up getting the Hogue OM5 grip for 35, which is great, but the leather looks different than, yeah. The Hogue one's the only one that I could find uh, myself. But yeah, there's none. You always have to remove the grip to swap the battery. I mean, at least you don't have, at least the memory card's on the side, right? But the battery door and the whole grip is better than the Olympus original because it has an Arca Swiss plate on the bottom, so you can mount it directly to your tripod. So even if the original OEM grip from Olympus or OM Systems had a battery door access, it probably still would not have the Arca Swiss base. So um, the Hogue is probably the best option, and a lot cheaper, right? About a third the price. When I started bird photography, I used my A6000, and Kit 55 to 200 was frustrated, but it made me learn. Um, Gosh, people keep calling me. Anyhow, when I started bird, oh, okay. Yeah, I used to have I used to have the 55 to 200 for my Sony NEX6. I sold it later because I switched to Nikon. Uh, that was a good lens, though. It was a good lens. Do you get dust on your Sony cameras? I never get dust on my M43. I do get dust. I've noticed that. Like the first day, I took my Sony A7R5, and right away, swapping lenses or whatever, dust spots right away. I guess it's been mitigated somewhat because the shutter closes now when you change lenses, but yeah, I run a blower over the sensor every now and then just to keep the dust spots off. You don't want the dust to stay on the sensor too long. It'll eventually get stuck and you have to actually clean it. And Blaine says, I don't have any Nikon gear, but oh, let me respond to this person. They want to take me out for my birthday, but uh but I have so many plans today. Let's say it nicely. Okay, there we go. All right. So Blaine says I don't have any Nikon gear, but they have 400 f4.5 can be had. Oh, really? But that's got to be the Nikon F mount, right? I don't. I did see that. I I don't like the idea of adapting F mount glass onto Z mount cameras. And a lot of people are saying they're not having any problems, but I've heard people having problems too. And I've witnessed it of people adapting zoom lenses. In this case, it was a zoom lens to a Nikon Z, and it didn't work that well. It was missing focus a lot. Could have been the lens and not the adapter, but I just tried not to. I just tell people try to use native lenses if we're talking about autofocus. Try to use native mounts. And Wayne says, trying to shoot some burrowing owls led to purchase of my first DSLR. It was impossible to get shots on the phone. Yeah, certainly telephoto is one of the strengths of a real camera. You can get a nice long lens. And Tamron's 18 to 400 f mount is great all arounder for walk around birds in the park and event slash street photography, but you need good light. Yeah, right. That's the other thing. These super zooms, it was like an f8 on the long end. And yeah, you would need a ton of light. I think I had the 18 to, when I was shooting Nikon, I had a Tamron. I think it was an 18 to 300. Maybe it was a 24 to 300, but it was one of their super zooms. I think it was a 24 to 300. But anyway, and it was pretty relatively compact. And I sold that thing pretty quickly. The image quality, because I had been using uh, primes mostly up to that point, and I had I had the Sigma 17 to 50 2.8, which was pretty good. I wasn't totally happy with that either. I ended up selling it, and I just like to shoot primes now. But yeah, it's like I said, super zooms are great just for walking around and taking pictures. I love the kit lenses. I like the little zoom on my LX100. I mean, I'm not against zooms. There's nothing wrong with them. But when I want ultimate image quality, I'm gonna, and I'm gonna throw a prime on. And Walter says super zoom is for the starter ones, all in one, never intended for the pro or advanced amateur. Yep. And Andrew Galloway is here. Good to see you. Hello. And the OM5 and the 12 to 200 lens will give you so many options for a reasonable price. Yes. If you can, though, I'd recommend the 12 to 100 f4. It's a much, much better lens. It doesn't have the reach, obviously, but I'd argue you could almost crop in on the 12 to 100 and get a better image than zooming all the way to 200 on 12 to 200. You never stop learning. If you do, then you should quit. that indefinite by definition, if you stop learning, you can quit, right? Um, John Thomas, good to see you. Jesse Espinoza is here. Awesome. You have the same last name as my favorite TV show. One of the characters in it. Um, they don't use his whole name most of the time. I know his last name is Espinoza. I think it's Dan Espinoza. Anyhow, and really good points. You have to visualize and imagine what could be and where you need to be for that to happen. Yep. I think that was when we were talking about the composition. And Darko says, I learned composition from my drafting graphic arts and art classes in high school so many moons ago, which I apply to my photography today. But YouTube has many tutorials for newcomers to the art. Yep. A lot of stuff. And, a lot of photographers, the master photographers, when you look at their backgrounds, a lot of times it's in painting or music or some other art. Uh, and they obviously that's ported over to their photography. Simner says, yes, field craft is important in wildlife as well as patient. Yeah, I don't have a field craft, but that'll certainly help you get closer. Many years ago, the rule of thirds taught me that the primary subject doesn't have to be dead center in a frame and often shouldn't be. Yep. Rule of thirds is if you're going to learn any composition rule, start with that and you can stick with that and forget the rest. Really. I mean, there's a lot of other rules of composition and there's a lot, some people make a big stink about rules, right? Like don't follow the rules or you can, break the rules or learn the rules so you can break them. It's like, you know, just learn them. It doesn't hurt, right? If it helps you to see a scene a little better and start organizing elements, um, all the better, in my opinion. But I think it's better to say rules. Using the rules of composition don't make a good picture, right? I think using the rules of composition is more of an exercise in discipline and learning, right? So just use them to help you start to see the scene and the elements in a scene and how to put those elements together. But that doesn't mean you're going to have a good picture in the end. That's a lesson I need to learn. Sit and wait and look at the scene as a beginner. It's super easy to fall into the trap of just shooting away and not having a single decent. Yeah. Oh, I was going to show a couple of pictures from yesterday. Let's see if I can make that happen. Okay. So this is my TG5. I went out and I was just taking some pictures. So like this one here, right? Let me start with the the full 4x3 frame. This one here, I was trying to get as close as possible to this goose and get a nice detailed picture of it. And what I missed is these two geese in the back. I'm like, damn it. But when I was in the scene, I was so focused on uh this goose and looking at this goose and the reflection and in the way its head, the one thing I got right was I waited for him to turn and look at me. And then the background here, because I didn't want to cut his head off with the horizon. So if these two geese were not in here, this would be probably a perfect composition of a goose, a perfect portrait of a goose, I should say. But I just totally missed it. And this shot here was I saw these ducks out here. So this was more of a test shot to see how the camera performs at 100 millimeters. and it's fine, but the ducks were too far away. But I knew that when I took the picture, but I just wanted to get a feel for the camera. So this outing was really about me. Uh, was about me getting a feel for the camera again because I haven't used the camera in a long time. But I was just trying to get a feel for the camera's capability. So I was zooming in and out. I was getting close. So that's why I made a lot of mistakes on composition and all of these images. Basically, all of these images, I made a mistake. And then this shot here was I put the camera into continuous shutter mode, and this bird just took off out of the blue, but it's out of focus. It's blurry because of motion blur, and that's because I'm at 1/125th shutter speed, and this again is another mistake on my part because I went from shooting like portraits to shooting action, and the controls on the TG5 are just too awkward to quickly change, and it doesn't have shutter priority anyway. So I would have had to set up the scene or set up the camera, adjust the ISO so I get the shutter speed that I want, and then adjust the exposure, etc., and then wait for this duck to take off. But and then here I was working with backlighting, right? So I wanted to see how much this picture I took with the intent of post processing, and I wanted to see how the shadow recovery was. And then these are total silhouettes, right? So I intentionally wanted a silhouette. Uh, so I ended up with this photo out of the group. But again, I wasn't paying attention to the geese here in the background. I didn't like that. Uh, and then I tried a couple of macro shots, and the TG5 doesn't have HDR built in. I don't think it does. I'll have to double check. I was going to do that today. So I bracketed these shots manually, so you can see I have uh, -2 exposure, normal exposure here, and then +2 on the exposure comp. And then I just blended them myself. Um, I blended them myself, and I think it was this image. I ended up with this image, which is okay. Uh, and then because the TG5 is waterproof, I went in and I dipped the camera into the water a little bit so I could get really close to this feather. If you look at this feather, let's see, this is, so I was walking and I saw this feather and it had some nice water drops on it. So I just took a couple shots this way. I still had the camera like in continuous shutter, so I got a lot more shots than I needed. But and then I started thinking, how can I compose the scene? So I started going around this one feather, trying different angles, and I kept missing focus here. Uh, but I finally got one in focus, and uh, and then I processed it, and I got this. This is my final image, and you can see the details are really, really nice on this. So I posted this on my Instagram, and then I got one other shot, and then the problem is the feather kept moving around, and the water kept getting blown around by the wind. So I had to constantly keep moving around myself. It wasn't like it was in one position. So I kept trying and trying different things, and I ended up with, I think it was, a lot of these shots are just out of focus. Where is it? Um, yeah, this one. I ended up with this one, and this I thought came out really nice. And it's really nice detail on the water drops in here. Unfortunately, the feather had blown over next to this stick that's in the background, and nothing I could do about it. And I try not to disturb the scene, when I run into it, I just try to take it where it was. I don't like to, you know, I don't like to force the composition and put things in different places when I don't have to. I like to take things as they are when I come up to them. But those are the shots I got with the TG5. And again, my intent being, I was testing the camera out in a lot of different modes: continuous shutter, macro, uh, and then zooming in and out, you know, to maximum zoom, minimum zoom. And then when I saw this feather, you'll notice that I have a lot of pictures of that feather. And that's where I said, this could be a great shot. This shot has potential. So I took a lot of time. I probably spent 10 or 15 minutes on this one feather once I found it. Actually, let me take a look at how much time I spent on it, because everything is time stamped. My first picture of that feather was at 7:09, and that's AM, I think. And the last picture was 7:11. So I spent 2 minutes. That's not right. I know I was standing there a while. Where's another feather? 7:15. Okay, so I spent basically 6 minutes. Oh damn, man, time moves really slow. Clearly, I didn't spend enough time on that, but I did take a lot of pictures. And then this sequence here, I'm just scrolling through these. I didn't spend a lot of time. Okay. Anyway, let me go back to the chat window. Uh, so I spent 6 minutes on that feather, but that's a long time to spend on one little tiny thing, isn't it? I think. The R6 might have been cheaper and just as good. Oh, okay. Going back to my friend that bought the R5 Mark II, she likes to do sports action photography, specifically birds in flight and stuff. And the R5 Mark II, as far as I know, is the only Canon that has the pre-capture feature. I don't think the R6s do. Um, so that's why I pushed her to the R5 Mark II, because it has pre-capture. And yeah, because I said you can get, because she asked me, is the R5 better than the R5 Mark II and vice versa? And I said, well, R5 Mark II, because of the pre-capture and the it doesn't have a rolling shutter issue, so you can shoot in silent shutter mode. Uh, I recommended the R5 Mark II, and it has a faster frame per second than the R5. The R6 and the R6 Mark II, great cameras, but she wanted the higher resolution, and she wanted and I don't think those had pre-capture either. So that's why I pushed her to. That's why I suggest the R5 Mark II. Since that's her budget, why not get the best you can get? I mean, whatever your budget is, always get the best that you can. Is the way I see it. And if somebody has a $10,000 budget, uh, because like the Nikon Z8 is, uh, the camera body is not a whole lot cheaper. It was on sale for like $3,700, so it was about $500 cheaper. But it has everything, pre-capture, 8K video, great ergonomics, great image quality, high-res sensor, has everything for less money. On top of that, you can buy third-party lenses, uh, third-party zoom lenses like from Tamron, the 24 to 28 to 75 2.8, and the other lens I suggested, I forget what it was now. But yeah, she could have got in for like 5 grand, maybe six, with a Nikon system that would do exactly the same thing as that Canon system. But she wanted Canon, so there you have it. Hey Rob, good morning from Rocky Mountains. Photography is just one way of making things more complex than need to be. Also, just wondering if you have had a chance to use the 35. I did. I assume you mean 35 to 100 zoom. Marco was very kind to send me one. I have it right here, and I'll show you a couple of pictures. I've only taken a few pictures of Ellie. I did some with this flash, and I did some without. I got my lens hood for it. I don't like the lens hood that it came with because it's a monster. It's as big as the lens hood that comes with it. I just need uh, I just need a little bit of a lip to protect the front element because I don't like to use filters like UV filters or protection filters. I'd rather have it bare, or if I'm going to use a filter, it's going to be for a purpose like an ND filter. So I got my lens hood in for it the other day. Uh, but I can show you a couple of pictures. Let me see. These are just in the house. These aren't very interesting. These are the ones I took with flash. Let me see if I highlighted any. I'll show you in just a second. No, I haven't curated these images at all. Uh, but like here's one I took with the flash of Ellie. So if I haven't curated or processed these yet. So let me put a basic preset and apply some automatic lighting. So there's a nice shot, I think, of Ellie. And then I'll just warm it up a tiny bit. Oh, not that much. Something like that. A little bit of magenta. And then brighten her eyes. Just a little bit there, a little bit of clear view. And then pull that greenish blue color out. I think it's more in this range. Or is it something like that? Just move it up in here. Anyway, I would fix these bright hot spots. When dogs get older, they kind of their eyes reflect a little bit differently. Uh, there's that, and then I took. I think these are some more that I took of her using that lens, but this is without flash in the daytime. I like this picture of her. This was in the house. uh, there's a couple other nice shots of her in here. I like this one. The 35 to 100. It has nice bokeh and everything. And autofocus is great. And this was on the OM1. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the lens. It's great. Let's see. I use different speed and size SD cards depending on what I hope to shoot and whether I'm doing photo or video. Interesting. I mean, you definitely need larger SD cards if you're going to do video. And the smallest SD cards you can really buy anymore, like the 32 gig. And those are getting hard to find. If you want to, most people they're going to buy the 128s, the 256. And Canon RP is a cheap full frame camera. It is. It is very cheap. It's a nice little camera. For a little more, you can get the R8 though, which has much better autofocus and a better sensor. I think it's lower res, but better dynamic range and all that good stuff. And Andrew says, I'm about to pull the trigger on a Panasonic Sumilex yeah, I don't think you'll have any regrets on that lens. The only thing that holds me back from buying it, I want it so bad myself, is I have the 17-1.8, but I think a 15 would be nice. I'm gonna get one day. I've had it in my shopping cart on my wish list for about a year now, and I've just never pulled the trigger. Rob, is that old school style flash from Godak's? Yeah, it is. This is their Godak's Luxmaster. I did a review on this lens. They sent it out to me to review. It's a great flash. Uh, I'm I got the I bought the Olympus trigger. I was thinking about just using a sync cable. It's more reliable. Fire the flash. But I bought this one. They sent me one uh for free, right, to review, but it was I asked for the Nikon one because they didn't have the Olympus one available. So I asked for the Nikon and I gave that to Walter, and now and then I've since just bought my own in the Olympus because I rarely shoot Nikon. But yeah, this is it. But I'm thinking I'm just gonna get a sync cable for my little port here and plug it in. It's more reliable than radio because it's very easy to control the manual power because there's a wheel right here. And that's what I would do if I was shooting like an event or something. And that's partially what I'm doing. I'm practicing for an event that's coming up. Is I want to use this flash, and I can just shoot in manual mode and adjust the power very quickly. Because when you shoot in TTL, sometimes it it gets it wrong, right? It doesn't balance. I just don't like to rely on TTL. I don't think it's reliable. So I always, once I get sort of a base exposure, I'm in the ballpark. I can usually stick with that and then just eyeball it. Okay, I need about an extra stop or a third of a stop, and I can just roll the wheel a little bit. I can just eyeball the scene and adjust the flash power output, but the camera settings are going to be fixed, right? It'll probably be like ISO 1600, 1/250th of a second, or maybe 1/125th, and then f4, right? I used to shoot at f2.8. It depends what I'm shooting, but if I'm shooting people if I'm shooting a single person, I'll do f2.8. If I'm shooting two people, I'm going to shoot f4 because the second person, unless they're standing exactly on the same focus plane, they're going to be out of focus, even at f2.8 on a micro four thirds. If they're just a little bit out, uh, so that's why I don't get this like I get it, but I'm not going to use full frame, because I have a Sony with the 85 f1.8. I'm not going to use that or the 50 f1.8 that I have for the event because even though, yeah, technically I might get a little better image quality, I'm going to be suffering with aperture because I'm going to have to crank the lens up to f8 if I'm going to be shooting anybody that's a couple, and that's harder than adjusting the flash power, in my opinion, getting the aperture right. So if I can fix the aperture, adjust the flash power, because once you're at f8, the problem with f8 on a full frame camera, okay, yeah, I have the depth of field. I'll probably get the same or better image quality, but the problem is you kill all of the ambient light with a full frame camera. You lose the ambience of the environment, and I'm talking about event photography at night. You lose the ambience of the scene, right? Because this is going to be, yeah, it's going to be kind of a festive kind of event, and I don't want to lose the all the colors and different colors I'm going to be getting from the ambient light in the scene. And if I want to get the depth of field that I want, full frame camera, I'm going to have to be at f8 minimum. F11 is better. right? Especially if there's 5 or 6 people in the scene, you really need to be at f11 on a full frame camera. And when you're at f11, you have just smashed all of the ambient light and all of the ambiance of the environment. So even for event photography, these are the reasons I prefer Micro Four Thirds, because I can shoot at f4 for 2 to 4 people. I can shoot at f5.6 if it's a group of people, and maintain that ambient light in the scene. More often than not. I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to kill the ambient light. Uh, but for the most part, more of the shots are going to have ambient light, that ambience from the night, the evening that people enjoyed, and and Micro Four Thirds is the only way to do that. And then image quality is easily fixed with DxO and things like that. And Irene Rudnick got a free Hasselblad as well. They even gave Pops his travel budget. Wow. I don't know who Irene Rudnick is, but I know James. Yeah, they really set James up. Good for him, man. Um, but yeah, Marco, you didn't get an email either, right? Marco has a computer YouTube channel, hot hardware. Lasse says, "I'm too impatient to wait minutes for a bee to return to a flower." Yeah, it's okay. Your photography is fine. Lasse submits images for editing every week. Hey, Roderick, sell that 7 to 14 and get the 8 to 25. Way more versatile and yeah, trust me, it's crossed my mind. It has crossed my mind to do that because I can probably get 200 or 300 bucks for the 7 to 14, and then that'll bring the cost of the other one down to about $400. I don't know. Let me just look what the Panasonic 7 to 14 is selling for. Uh, yeah, 300 bucks for excellent. Oh, that's not the same lens. This one, 329, pre-owned. That's an auction. 355 or best offer. 400, 450 for excellent. So let's say, so after eBay fees and all that, I might get 300 bucks for it, right? And but I still have to make up $400. I don't know. That's a bit tight. Uh, because I'm waiting for that new camera to come out from OM Systems, and an 8 to 25 is a much bigger lens, right? So that's kind of offsetting me a little bit because I used the 7 to 14 on a gimbal, and 7 to 14 is very lightweight. The 8 to 25, let me just double check. Uh, what is it? OM 8 to 25 mm. This lens is by weight 411 grams, and the Panasonic 7 to 14. Man, they want 750 bucks new for that thing. Anyway, uh, it's 300 grams. So, well, I guess only 100-gram difference, a little more. I have to give some thought. But physically, it's much larger, but it does let you use filters too. So, I mean, there's a lot of pros, but 400 bucks worth, I got to question, if there's 400 bucks worth for me. Uh, oh, you got the 8 to 25. As soon as you mounted it and looked through, yeah. It is fun. If you haven't shot like super wide angle before, it's a lot of fun. You can get shots. What I like to do with super wide angles, I like to get really close up to a tree trunk and point it up and get this like beautiful spread of the branches and everything. And Linda said, but maybe Canon DSLR boyfriend at least lets her use his lenses. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And Pucho, hey, it's been a while. Hello from New York City. How to fix histogram clipping in areas other than shadows or highlights? Why does this happen? How to avoid when taking photos? Well, this is a little confusing to me because if something is clipping, it's a shadow or a highlight. So when you say in areas other than highlights and shadows, doesn't make sense to me. You're basically over or underexposed for the scene, and you're going to have to bracket. So let's just say the entire image is clipping, like a lot of the image is clipping in the shadows, or a lot of it's clipping in the highlights. You're going to have to adjust your exposure and pick your battles. Do you want to save the highlights or do you want to save the shadows? Uh, and if you want to get a single shot of, but the actual solution, if it's a static scene, still life, you're going to have to bracket the shot, basically. Because if you're clipping, particularly if you're a base ISO 200 and you're clipping, say, 50% or more of the image, uh, there's no way around it. You have to pick your battle. Do you want to save the shadows or do you want to save the highlights and adjust the exposure accordingly? And if it's a static scene, you're on a tripod. Well, you don't even have to be on a tripod, but if you can hold steady, you're going to have to bracket. Plus or minus 2 EV is what I recommend. Bappy, be happy. That's funny. Uh, and my Lumix 45 to 200 mega OIS made me learn to buy better lenses. Thing was sharp as chocolate pudding. That's funny. That's funny. Um, like I said, the telephoto zoom lenses in general are just made to go out and shoot in random situations. But when you really want to improve your photography, you're going to go out with a prime and concentrate on all the things we talked about earlier. And Simgens has got to use the MC14 for a good price. I'm planning to add the 40 to 150 2.8 next month for the zoo. I wonder if I should also get the MC20 or use that money toward, yeah, use the money towards a 300 f4, hands down. It's not even close. Just get the 300 f4. You will not be sorry. The 40 to 150 with the 1.4 is an excellent combination, but if you need more reach, you get the 300 f4. You can use that 1.4 on the 300 f4 as well, and that's what I use. Is the 300 f4 with the teleconverter. I use that a lot. That is money much better spent than spending $300-400 on a teleconverter. The 2x teleconverter, I should say. The 1.4 is definitely worth it. Z-mount is faster natively, but FTZ, in my humble opinion, has worked so well. But if but if you have issues, check firmware on the cam, but also note on past user experience with regards to AF accuracy. Yeah, you have to do a little due diligence if you really want to use adapted lenses to your camera, regardless of brand. It wouldn't hurt to go, deep dive into the forums and do a little due diligence and see if anyone else has experience with that combination. When I shoot dancers, this happens all the time. An arm or a leg in the background spoil. Yeah, yeah. And I wasn't. That goose was not moving at all. He's just sitting there. I was just waiting for him to turn his head. Ah, And then System says, put the money towards the amazing 300 F4. You can always use the MC20 at a later date. Together with the 4152A, you have every, yeah, absolutely. Rob Trek, have you tried Macro with the TG5 to use any of the accessories? So I'm experimenting a bit with the LED adapter here. And what I found yesterday was even in the shadows, right, in the shade, I should say, this didn't make much difference. It's just not bright enough. So this was my first outing in the real world with this particular setup with the LED accessory. But right now, even though I got the generic one for 20 bucks, I don't know if the OEM one is any better. I can't see that it's any different. It's just redirecting the light from the LED to this ring. But I was not impressed with the performance of the light output of this in the shade. You know, it was pretty bright out, but I was in the shade and it just wasn't cutting it. Uh, I've not tried the other accessories like the teleconverters that you can put on here, and there might be some other accessories. I haven't tried anything else, but this one here, it's great here in my house because it's very dark indoors. So if you're doing indoor type macro stuff, this does work well. But when I was outside in the shade, this was just draining the battery for no reason. It's because my intent was that I wanted to be able to use a faster shutter speed or lower ISO because I'm adding light from this. And I think this is really only useful is when you're really like because you can get this close with a TG5. I mean, you can put this TG5 right up against. I mean, let me see if I can demonstrate that. But if I put this in the microscope mode, so if I put my hand straight up against this, no light is getting in here at all. That's when this LED light comes in handy, see? So you can see my hand. So I got the exposure bumped up. Let me drop that down. Okay, so but yeah, I can focus on the palm of my hand here with the LED light, take a picture, and that's the image I got. So this LED light is good for really close, right? Like I could do another shot here, and I got good light on the palm of my hand. That's where this light makes sense. But as soon as I get about this far out, whether I'm indoors or in the shade, this light doesn't have enough output. It's only good for this. So it has its uses. And what's nice is it doesn't really add any bulk to the camera. So I just leave it on there. And if the odd occasion I might want to get that close to something, then I have it, right? If I need to use the flash, though, I do need to take it off because it covers the flash. It doesn't. It does not transmit the flash through this ring. Only the LED. So just be aware of that. The flash is covered. So if I want to use flash, I have to take it off. But for the most part, I don't use flash, right? And this works. Okay. And Darko or somebody said they're heading out. I think it was Darko. But whoever it was, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. Uh, and good morning, Rob. Tuned in late. I'm about to take a non-photo road trip, but need to take something long to record unexpected. Probably my old Sony WX150 pocket camera and my Olympus stylus. Yep. I'm not familiar with the Sony, but the stylus, all of the old styluses are great little cameras. Depends which one. If it's like the XZ2, that's one I have. It's awesome. It's an awesome. Oh, you have the 1S. Yeah, awesome little camera to take around. It's great. And then, yep, saving up for the 300 f4 is probably the best idea. I found some used 1200 to 1500. So maybe next year. For now, I'm set anyway. Yeah, you're set. You're set. The 300 f4 is really for wildlife, right? Birding, things like that. And Rock Trek, help me understand, why would full frame crush the ambient light at f8, but MFT won't at f4? Oh, all right. Um, well, let's say your shutter speed is fixed because I'm using flash. I'm going to fix the shutter speed at 1/25th of a second, maybe even 1/60th of a second if I want to let more ambient light. So as you slow your shutter speed down, you're letting more ambient light in, right? So that makes sense. When you open the aperture up to say f2.8, you're letting more light into the lens. When you close it down to f8, you're letting less light in. So let's just start with the very basic fundamentals for everyone. Not, I'm sure but just for everyone's sake, you're letting more light in when you use slower shutter speeds and you use wider apertures. Wider meaning a lower f number. F2.8 is wider than f8. Okay, so what happens between f4 and f8? You're losing 2 stops of light, which is not a small number. 2 stops is 8 times difference, right? In light. So f4 is 8 times brighter, right? So 2 and double that. Am I thinking 8 or is it 4 times? 4 times brighter. 2 stops is 4 times. My bad. Because it's 1 stop is 2, 2 stops is 4, right? Because you double it each time. 2, 4, 8, 16. Yeah. So 4 times as much light between f4 and f8. So you've cut 4 times the light. Now the ambient light you cannot adjust, right? The ambient light is fixed in the room. So if they have colored, think of a Christmas party. If they have a Christmas tree and they have lights hanging from the windows and other places, and you have tungsten lighting and ceiling coming down, all of that ambient light is mixed together to create this very Christmassy, warm feeling with speculars of green and red and yellow. The only way to get that ambient light in is either use a slower shutter speed or open up the aperture. But I have to use, on a full frame, f8 to get the depth of field I need to take a picture of, say, 2 or more people. I would say 2 to 5 people is a good range for f8. So I'm cutting 4 times the light. I'm getting 1/4 amount of the light into the lens. So I'm cutting all of the ambient light. It's like turning all the lights down by 4 times in the room if you shoot at f8, say, versus f4. So just think of it that way. Um, it's like turning off 75% of the light in the room when you shoot at f8. And that's what I mean by crushing the ambient light at f8 is, and I can't make up for it with shutter speed like in a regular photography, right? Of still life. I'm doing pictures of people. If I lower the shutter speed down to, say, I would have to go from 1/125th to 1/60 to 1/30th of a second. Now, the problem, okay, so I could shoot at 1/30th of a second, f8, get the same ambient light, adjust the flash power so that I get the same brightness on the person, right? So in effect, I could get, and the flash will effectively freeze the motion on the person. So I'll still get a sharp image, right, of the person. So you might ask, why don't I just do that? Well, the problem is there's going to be motion blur in the background because the background is not going to be affected by the flash because the flash is not going to have that kind of reach. So if there's any kind of motion blur in the image, right, because I'm shooting at 1/30th of a second, you're going to see a lot of it in the background. So the Christmas tree or the Christmas lights or whatever decorations they have are going to be a little bit blurry if I'm shooting at 1/30th of a second. And people in the background that might be moving around are also going to be blurry. That might be good for creative effect. And people do use long shutters for creative effect in weddings and things where you have two people dancing, right? And then you spin the camera using a slow shutter speed, so you get this nice swirly effect around the the couple dancing, but then the flash pops and freezes the action in the middle. I'm not taking pictures of people dancing, and I'm not going for that kind of effect. The image that I want is I want to take a picture of a couple with the ambience of the lighting in the room. And I want to make sure that I don't have any motion blur at all. So I'm going to freeze all of the motion in the room so I have no motion blur or shaky image right in the background. I have the foreground, which is the people, is going to be frozen because I'm using flash, right? Flash is going to freeze the people. And I'm going to maintain the ambient light because I'm using f4 instead of f8. I'm maintaining the ambient light, and I keep my shutter speed at 1/125th of a second, which will effectively eliminate the motion blur. I hope that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, let me know. If anybody has any questions on that, let me know. But that's the reason I prefer Micro Four Thirds in low light, even though the sensor performance, noise performance is not as good as full frame. Clearly, this is why I prefer Micro Four Thirds for certain kinds of events, uh, particularly in low light, over full frame, because I get that depth of field that I want for people, you know, 2 to 5 people. I like to be at, f8 effectively, or f4. If it's more than that, I like to be at f5.6, right? To make sure I get everybody in focus. Okay. Lassay's heading out. Okay, Lassay. And Rob Trek, Irene is awesome portrait photographer. You should check her out. You'll look some of the scenery. Okay, I'll check her out, Irene. And let's see. Funcho says a histogram color channel have a peak over Y value 255, but are not in the extreme shadows like X values 0 to 225, or highlights that have values between 200 and 250 and 255. Oh, so you're talking about the individual color channels. It's the same, but the same principle applies. Uh, there's just no way around it. The same thing applies. You're gonna have to bracket or pick your battles when you start to see a spike in a histogram. There's no way around that. Um, yeah, there's no way around it. You can get around that in black and white photography by using color filters, but not if you're taking color images. Yeah, you're gonna have to pick your battles. Choose the shadows or choose the highlights or bracket for still life. Is ambient light not subject to shutter speed rather than aperture? No, ambient light's affected by both shutter speed and aperture, both of those. On the flash, shutter speed doesn't affect the flash brightness, but aperture does. So if I'm at f8, this is another benefit to using lower apertures. If I'm at f8, I have to use more flash power, 2 stops more flash power. Uh, so I'm draining my batteries faster too. Because I could be instead of being at full power at f8, I could be at like what would that be? I could be at 1/4 power on the flash. So I'm using 25% of the power on the flash than I would at f4 than I would at f8. And that's another huge benefit, right? You're using less flash power and you're not blinding people. And Rob Trek, isn't that JJC light for TG cameras meant only for macro? Yeah. Yeah, it's only for macro. Clearly, because close macro like this. Yeah, it's not for like flash photography. It's not going to light up anybody's face. So what I meant was if you're only this far, this is why I found it not very useful. Even if I'm only this far away, it didn't make any difference. Okay, Darko's heading out. Thank you. You have a great week too. Uh, and James says, here to say thanks for your video. Received the All-in-One Mark III last week. I came with the 25 millimeter, the 14, and the 75 to 300, the 14 to 150, the 12 to 45. F4 is in my future. I've been watching your videos to learn. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate taking the time to come in and say hello and say thank you. You're very welcome. So it says, my understanding was the TG5 LED attached was designed for really close macro shots when you get close to the camera lights. Any off-camera flash options? No. The only off-camera flash option is to use the uh, optical trigger on, say, an off-camera flash and use the flash. So, and the TG5 also has remote control. So if you have Olympus branded flash like the FL700, FL900, you can actually control the flash power with the TG5 through the menu system. It has the RC control. But if you're El Cheapo like me and all you have is like this, I paid $30 for this flash. This is a Flashpoint. It's basically the Godox TT600. I would have to rely on the optical trigger. So I have to make sure that when I take a picture, the flash fires in manual mode, and that there's a sort of a line of sight between the camera and the flash receiver. So what I might do is, rotate the flash this way so that, I can point it down, and then this will, anyway, you get the idea. That's really the best off-camera flash way. Unless you have an Olympus flash, then you can use the RC function where you can control the output, TTL, manual power, etc. And Leslie's heading out. Thanks for dropping in. Appreciate it. And John's Clicks is here. Hello. All right. So I caught up on the chat, and it's been a couple hours, I guess. So if anyone else has any other questions, just leave them in the chat section. I'll be happy to try and answer them best I can. Particularly on the last topic about ambient light and the using flash, killing the ambient light. Sadly, all Godox here. Yeah, it's not sad. It's fine. Just use the optical trigger. I don't know how good the optical triggers are on the TT600. I've never used it. But a lot of times these generic flashes, like and Godox is, I consider still a generic flash, right? A lot of times these are not very good. I found on the V1 it is pretty good, but I use the radio triggers now. But if I have to use the optical trigger indoors, this is fine. But when you get outdoors, it's like the ambient light kind of floods the optical trigger on this, and it's not able to see when the camera fires the flash. Okay, well, John Click says, I'm having a terrible time choosing between keeping the S5 II in lenses and my EM5 III in good lenses. I'm doubling up too much. What would you do? If I sell the S5, I'll lose more money. Whew. I would say if you do video heavily, like you like to do grading and if you like to do video, especially if you do video work professionally, keep the S5 II and get rid of the EM5. If you're more of a casual photographer, you do photo walks, I would just keep the M5 Mark III because S5 II, I love the L-mount system. I love the lenses with it. But I can say the same thing about the Olympus system, right? The M5 Mark III is a great everyday camera. You can take it with you everywhere. Just drop a pancake lens on it. You're good to go and do everything with it, right? Like the pancake 14 to 42 zoom or the 20 millimeter f1.7 from Panasonic. It's much more portable system as an everyday camera. So if you want an everyday camera, EM5 Mark III. However, if you do any kind of video work professionally, S5 II all day long. Uh, the only other caveat I would say is if you're heavy into birding, you know, the S5 II has the animal bird detect. So you'd have to buy, if you don't already, you'd have to buy some super telephoto lenses, which of course there's some good ones out there, I think. Uh, I'm trying to think. I've never shot full frame L mount telephoto lenses, to be honest, but I assume there's one or two good ones out there. If not from third party manufacturers as well. I'm pretty sure Sigma makes an L mount super telephoto. Then the S5 II makes more sense. You're going to enjoy using that more aside from the overall size and weight. Because it's going to be massive. So that's where I would put it. If you prioritize an everyday camera to go out and shoot every day on a casual basis, EM5 Mark III. If you're more professional and you're getting paid and you enjoy sports action type photography with super telephotos in addition to that, the S5 Mark II makes sense. Uh, no question. So I had a similar decision maybe 2 years ago. I had the S5, not the S5 Mark II. And I bought it because I do video work professionally. And then the OM1 came out, and finally they had 4K 60 10-bit video. Still not as good as the S5, okay? But it's smaller, lighter, better image stabilization, and the video quality game was upped just enough that I could sell off my S5. I didn't need it anymore. But I could not get away with using the M5 Mark III for video in my professional work. I really need that extra dynamic range because I did receive some feedback that wasn't positive once when I was shooting with the EM1 Mark III, which only had 420 8-bit video. Even the log profile, I was getting too much noise in the shadows and the overall quality wasn't great. But the OM1 change was a game changer for me, and I got rid of the S5. Um, that said, I still think about sometimes getting back into the L mount system. Uh, not for the video so much, but for the lenses. The L mount lenses are amazing, even from third party like Sigma. Uh, but the Lumix S5018, 8518, 3518, if you have that combination, man, that is amazing. So I don't know if you would get enough for the M5 Mark III to make it worth selling, right? So I would just keep both and then use the one that makes more sense. You want an every day take the M5 Mark III out, then when you want that really amazing image quality that you would get from the S5 II with those outstanding Lumix glass, take that out once in a while. That's what I would do. I would keep both. I wouldn't sell either one. I think they complement each other. And oops, sorry, that's Rob, as you mentioned the Panasonic 15 millimeter, I was thinking of getting the smaller, cheaper 14, but they are around 200 euros secondhand, and 15 is about 300. So I think I'll get that. Yeah, I would get the 15 over the 14 all day long. The 15 is a little bit thicker, but it's not a big deal. I mean, if you want the ultimate compactness, yeah, the 14 pancake, put that like on a GM5. But I forget what you're shooting, but if you're shooting any other camera other than those really tiny GM series, the 15 makes a lot more sense. It's going to be sharper, better contrast, definitely better autofocus performance for both video and photography. And of course, you get more light, right? Because I think the 14 is Isn't that a 2.5? It's not a 1.7. So it's worth every penny. And if you can get the 15 millimeter in that price range, and you're talking euros, 300 to 350, it's a no-brainer. Okay. So, looks like that's it for the questions. Oh, wait, sorry. There's one here. For telephoto, I have the 70-300 on the S5 and the 75-300 Ollie lens. The S5 II torched it, not for birds, more landscapes. I do shoot lots of video. That 70-300 is not bad. I haven't heard say anything bad about it, but I haven't heard anybody raving about that lens. But like I said, honestly, I haven't been looking at telephotos. When I think about my full frame systems, I think about normal to short telephoto primes. I rare I can't imagine using zooms, or I don't shop zooms for my full frame cameras. Um, yeah, there's not going to be any comparison though. The S5 II is going to be way better quality. Uh, but these are different focal lengths, effectively, right? Because the 75-300 is like a 150-600, and the 75-300 is a great lens, but where the focal lengths overlap, there's not going to be any comparison between the S5 and an EM5 in terms of image quality. Like I said, the L-mount glass is amazing, and it's not just because the S5 II is a full frame. It's the bird detect autofocus makes it a lot easier to use, and because there's a much larger pixel pitch on the S5 II, it's gonna capture less defects that a lens might have, right? So a 70-300 lens on a lower resolution sensor like a 24, and I'm talking between say 24 and 45 megapixels, but 24 is on the lower end for full frame. Images are going to effectively look sharper and better, and lenses are going to perform better on lower resolution full frame sensors than they will on higher resolution. And Jamie says, I've been trying to make custom button for sequential low, maybe the ISO button. How can I do that? You need to go into the button menu. So it's the well, I don't have an EM1 Mark III anymore, but you go into the custom menu, button menu. It's probably the B menu, right? Under the custom settings. So you go into the B menu, and I'm trying to think, can you assign? I don't think you can assign. Yeah, you cannot assign shutter mode to a button. So what you would need to do instead is save a sequential low setting into a custom menu, right? So save sequential low with what other save sequential low with whatever other settings you have, aperture priority, ISO, etc. Save the sequential low with all your other settings into C1, right? And then assign a button to C1. And then when you push C1, it'll go into that custom setting. You push C1, you push the button again, it'll toggle out of C1 back to whatever you were using. So that's the best way to do it, is your C1, save your sequential low into C1, but you're going to have to save all your other settings with it, which is not a big deal, right? So if you search my channel for videos on using custom buttons, it'll show you how to do that. But from a high level view, that's what you need to do, because I don't think you can assign it. You can look in the custom button menu, but I don't have an E1 Mark III here to show you exactly if it does or doesn't. But you can definitely do it using saving all your settings into C1. Okay. Have you ever purchased from Map Camera? I think I have. Let me look at my purchases. Uh, Purchase history. Let's see. This was from, nope, that's not Map. How about this one? Pretty sure. I feel like I have, but I don't see anything in my purchase history where, what, this has got to be one. Nope, 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 nope. So yeah, short answer is no. I mean, I watch a lot of their items when I'm looking for something very specific, but I haven't actually pulled the trigger on one because they're always they charge just a tiny bit more sometimes than I can get it from another seller. But Map Camera is top rated with great ratings, right? So there's no reason not to buy them as far as I can tell, but I haven't actually done it myself. I will one day though. Uh Yeah, MapCram is excellent. So yeah, they got so much great user feedback, but again, they're top rated. And as I've said in the past many times, when a seller gets a top rated status, that is no joke. They they they've earned that. In addition to that, basically that means they have no unresolved issues. They resolved every issue. So they've earned it in terms of customer service. But in addition to that, their motivation to keep that status uh, is they get a discount on the seller rate. So instead of paying 10%, they're paying 6% seller fee. So they're not going to risk anything to lose that status because we're not talking about one deal going sour. We're talking about everything they sell on eBay. They're going to lose a big chunk of change, probably half their income by losing that seller status. So that's why I always recommend, you buy from a top rated seller when you can, or you can take a chance on another seller that's very highly rated but doesn't necessarily have that top rated status. Or you can just, take a lot of risk and buy it from somebody that has, no rating, right? Or bad ratings. But I generally try to buy from, I look at top rated sellers first. If they have the availability, the specific product I'm looking for, and the price that I want and the condition, right? And then I look at rated sellers that are rated 99% or better if possible. I might go 98, but then I know I'm taking a little bit of a risk. So I look for 99 plus, if not 100% rating, even if they don't have a top rated status. And then I look for, and then the very last thing I look at is location. If they're local, most of the time I'm in no hurry to get whatever it is I'm buying because it's just a gas purchase. But if they're local and I can get it in a couple of days at a decent price and they accept returns, I might take a little bit of a risk there, but they still need to have a good rating. I will never buy from somebody that's zero. They need to have at least 100 positive ratings if they're not top rated. And I like to see, 1,000 positive ratings if I can. Okay. All right, Jamie. Well, like I said, if you search my channel, you'll find some videos that'll give you a lot of good guidance on that. And John Click says another topic. With the iPhone 16 release, YouTubers are finally starting to really compare classical cameras to phones. I guess I never watched those videos. when I see, iPhone or camera versus smartphone, um, because a camera will never replace the the ergonomics and tactile feel of using a real camera for me anyway. So even if a cell phone can take a better picture than a camera, I probably would never use it because I just like being able to hold, even if it's a compact camera like this, hold this, have a dedicated menu system, lots of buttons. Because how many cell phones have more than one button? Not many. Most of them just have a power button or they have volume buttons, but that's it. Even this little compact camera, I have one, two, three, four, five, six direct buttons, two dials, and then four D-pad buttons. Just on this, you know what I mean? It's like there's like 10 buttons altogether, plus accessories. Well, let's not count that. You can get accessories for phones now, but so that's why I don't watch any of those. I have a mild curiosity sometimes, but I still don't end up watching it. But no question that cell phones, the key advantage of cell phones really is being able to share images quickly and that you always have it with you, right? Cell phone is an everyday item, right? Like, not even wearing a watch is not even everyday item anymore, unless it's a smartwatch. But, there's certain everyday items, keys to my car, my watch, and my cell phone, my wallet. I never leave the house without those things. And then if I have an everyday camera, if I'm going anywhere, I never leave without a camera, either my Pen F or LX100. That's it. Uh, but that's the thing with a cell phone. You take it with you everywhere. And these comparisons, like if you're doing telephoto stuff, sports, action, wildlife, cell phone's never going to be able to do that. You just can't put a telephoto lens on a cell phone. And digital zoom is going to destroy the image quality. But for everyday stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if the cell phone is really, really close to most cameras for the intent and purposes of the cell phone. Now, um, another thing, you can't really use flash with a cell phone, but LED lighting is kind of coming into play more, so it's not quite as critical. But these comparisons are just, it's like when you're comparing full frame versus micro four thirds. Now they're doing camera X versus the iPhone 16. These comparisons to me are really a waste of time for most people. The most important thing is just to go out and shoot, right? Whether it's your cell phone or a camera, just go out and shoot and enjoy getting out, right, and taking pictures. Um, I'm kind of in that camp. I don't want to take away from people that are more technical reviewers that where you want hard data points, right, between different devices. I get that. This will do this will not, or this can do this, but this one does it a lot better. There's a lot of technical comparisons and technical reviewers, and if that's really a whole different conversation. Like you said, this is kind of a different topic where we're talking about the technical aspects of one device versus another. But I'm really not. I mean, I do it time to time comparing things, but as far as watching them for myself, I don't watch a lot of those. Uh, I feel like my time for me is much better spent watching, um, the masters of photography and looking at their photography and people's conversation about their photography, kind of like TED Talks for photography, but not TED Talk, documentaries of the masters of photography. I enjoy watching those, but I don't know. A lot of YouTubers. content creators, they just need good video for their content, and a cell phone certainly does that. And they have for a long time, to be honest. But if you know the basics of photography, good lighting and technique to some extent on certain, depending what you're shooting, you can get a good picture with any device that can capture an image. Like even this piece of crap camera. Oh, did it charge up finally? Let me see if I. Even this piece of crap camera. Um, let's see. Hello, camera. I got some decent pictures from this. It wasn't easy, but I got some decent pictures from this. And it does 4K video. And image stabilization is non-existent. So if I had this on a gimbal, it'd probably take decent video. And I only paid, like I said, $30 for this. And cell phones, they have a much higher standard, right? If we're talking iPhone 16, they have a much higher standard and level of technology into their camera sensor and processing and all of that. But I guess if you're saying they're starting to really compare them, they've always been comparing them. But maybe your point is that cell phones are really close. I don't know. I'll have to watch one. I haven't watched one of those in a while. And late to join, just want to note that really enjoyed your photos the other day from, oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, I like them. They came out okay. I wasn't trying to take great photos with them. I was just trying to get a feel for the camera because it's been a while. But there was a couple of keepers there. And I was thinking about Tony Northrup and Petapixel made videos on this topic. Phone manufacturers are putting most of their energy into camera features. I also love proper cameras. Yeah, I haven't watched either of those. I think I saw the thumbnails for them. I think Tony's was something like "Is Photography Dead?" And the Petapixel one, I don't remember. This is where depth of field and MFT is an advantage. Better depth of field at lower f-stop, so MFT at f4 has the same depth of field as full frame at f8, but the light's the MFT sensor with more light. You can use higher shutter speeds. Yeah, it's everything. Every all the advantages of Micro Four Thirds, and this is one of the big ones for me in event photography, is faster shutter speeds, lower aperture numbers, right? Wider apertures, and depth of field. All of these things are key advantages to me of using Micro Four Thirds in low light, which is which is contradictory to what a lot of people say about using Micro Four Thirds in low light. And the fact is, the advantages that Micro Four Third has play very well for event photography, in my opinion. And the OM1, uh, even though Robin Wong would argue with me about this, but I think the OM1 does a great job with face detect and autofocus at events. But like I said, Robin Wong would totally disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think it's always worked great for me. And true. How I said the previous comment today, I had a great time using the old D40, fun to shoot. Yeah. Canon D40. Nikon had a D40 also. I'm not familiar with the Canon. Oh, the Canon D40, the Nikon D40. Oh man, that D40 is a beast of a camera, that Canon. But it's excellent, man. That had that was a tank of a camera though, that D40. And really good I think it's a 10 megapixel CCD in that too, right? So and lots of features. And I think of the D40, that's when they went to 14-bit uh, AD converters. So great image quality for an old camera, assuming everything works, right? And Anthony says, would you be concerned if OM Systems stopped making cameras and lenses and stopped supporting current cameras next year? Um, for me and my business, not so much. because at this point there's plenty on the used market, and I try to buy used anyway. So a camera manufacturer being in business or not at this point for OM systems is irrelevant to me because there's plenty of stock out there in the used market for me to replace and use, right? Long term, it's definitely a big concern uh, because I enjoy the Micro Four Thirds system, the size and weight, the lenses, all of that stuff. And I don't think I'm going to live long enough where it's going to be an issue, right? Because in 10 years, I'll be 68, 20 years, I'll be 78. I mean, it's really when cameras start to get like 20 years old, 10 years old. Well, usually around 10 years old, electronics start to get a little flaky, and you have to be careful. And at 20 years, definitely, you don't want to be looking at, complex electronic devices. Um, so it definitely concerned me very long term. But for me though, I don't have any of the OM system professional services where if something breaks down and I need to send it in and get a replacement very quickly. For professionals that use their professional services like that, they would definitely be very concerned. But I'm primarily a consumer that uses OM systems gear professionally, right? But primarily I use it as a consumer. And if they go out of business, it's okay. I'll just buy something else. I don't have any specific brand loyalty. I would be a little sad because I really enjoy their system. But it's okay. I'll just buy something else. I'll buy a Fuji or Sony or Nikon, whatever, APS-C system. Whatever makes sense. I haven't really shopped APS-C hard, but I did. I bought an XH2. But yeah, I'd probably switch over to Fuji if Olympus or OM Systems stop making cameras for whatever reason. Um, or buy into Panasonic. I'm not crazy about the S9 Mark II uh, because of the size of it. It's just a little bigger than the OM1, but I hope they come out with smaller cameras like their G9X or their G8, GX8 or GX9. I'd like to see them come out with smaller cameras. Then I'll be all in on Panasonic hardcore. But OM System has the EM5 Mark III, OM10, OM5. They have really nice, very capable small cameras right now. And if they stop making them, I would definitely hope Panasonic can pick up the slack. And if they don't pick up the slack, then I'd have to start looking at APS-C systems. Because I want to keep everything as small and light as possible. But in all honesty, I'm pretty much set for a long time as a OM system owner, current OM system owner. I can buy whatever I want going forward for many years to come, I think. And the last few days I've been fighting gas for OM One Original, tough to resist. Yeah, I know what you mean. But if you do a lot of birding, it's worth it. And Gordon says, my other option for Panasonic to release a small rangefinder, but their reps on video last week said they have no plans. Oh, they have no plans, huh? Ah, that would suck. So we're gonna have to rely on Olympus making some more pens. And Marcus says, I hate all the speculation about OM going out of business, not having R&D, such BS. Pentax Ricoh is still around for God's sake. Yeah. And it's okay. I mean, I think, some people they'd like to continue to make a significant investment into the OM systems camera, right? Because lenses, let's talk about a lens, for example. If you're in the OM systems now and you want to buy, say, the the 150 to 400, you want to be able to use that lens for the next 10 years, right? But if in 10 years, the only thing you have access to are 10-year-old cameras because OM Systems stopped making cameras, the investment in that 150 to 400 lens is, you're not getting your money's worth really. If you want to invest in a 300 f4, that's $2,800, give or take, right? Um, you might be concerned that in 5 years, if you want to upgrade your camera system to the latest and greatest, you're not going to be able to. And you got this really expensive lens. And the other thought being is you're starting from scratch, and you have a $5,000 or $6,000 budget, and you invest in all these lenses and everything. In that case, I think you're kind of set, right? You're going to be fine, and you can use that system for the next 5 or 6 years, and just sell it off or switch over to another system at that point. But I get the anxiety, right? People are thinking about investing in a system, and they want to know that in 3 to 5 years that they can buy another camera body to go with their investment in their lenses. Uh, Now, to your point that the speculation is kind of, nonsense, right? Or you're tired of hearing about the speculation of OM systems. I agree with you on that. It's just it's really speculation, and it doesn't help at all to question the viability of a company when nobody knows. Nobody knows, right? Samsung created a great camera system. They're never going out of business, right? For in my lifetime, probably. But they stopped making cameras, right? Olympus stopped making cameras. Now it's OM Systems. OM Systems is a different company. But we had a little bit of notice, right? A little bit of lead time, not a lot. And it was a soft landing because it went to OM Systems that took over JIP, right? But if JIP decides to stop altogether and they don't find a buyer, say, for example, to take over and continue, uh, I get the anxiety some people might have in investing further into that system that are thinking long term. 10 years from now, can I use my expensive collection of lenses here on another camera? And for me, it's not a big deal, but some people that might really concern them, right? And Andrew says I'd go Nikon if OM system folded out. Not until I ran my Olympus cameras into the ground. Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. Nikon's not bad. They haven't. That C50 is a nice APS-C system. Hopefully, it gets updated a bit. And their full frame systems are nice and relatively inexpensive. I want a Z8 pretty bad, actually. Don't give me gas for a Z8 right now. Start asking for advanced features and talk about what you want from them online so the company knows what to target. Yep. Definitely, I try to put out there what I'm looking for all the time, right? Um, and both the M53 and M5 are really in a league of their own with P/F at their size. I agree. They're excellent, excellent cameras. I want an OM5, but honestly, what holds me back is the USB-C port. Uh, and the reason for that is I use the cameras in the studio a lot, and I want to be able to use the camera while it's powered via USB-C. And I just can't do that with anything but my OM1, right? Uh, but I'd like a smaller camera. And the OM5 has, but what really attracts me about the OM5 is I know it has excellent face detect, great image stabilization, small, lightweight, compact, handheld, high res. It's a fabulous camera in every other way. And I use dummy batteries right now on my EM5 Mark III, which is doing the web stream now, and my EM10, which I used a lot before I had to swap it. Uh, You can use dummy batteries, but that's kind of an imperfect solution because this is a third-party Chinese piece of crap battery, dummy battery. And fortunately, it's buffered a little bit by the camera's own internal electronics that I'm not too uncomfortable using third-party dummy batteries, but it still bothers me. Like I got the third-party battery that I bought a few years ago is broken all apart, and I'm holding it together now with just some electrical tape and putting that into my camera, which is probably not a good idea, but uh, but I bought another one since. But there's nothing like to natively just plug in the USB-C and power the camera. And if the OM5 had that, I would definitely own one right now as a replacement to my EM10 Mark II. I would definitely own an OM5, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait because I know they're gonna have to do it by regulation. They're gonna have to put a USB-C port into the next OM5, whether it's the Mark II or if they come out with some other camera. I'm not buying two OM1s. You know what I mean? I just don't need two. I only really use the OM1 for work. I rarely use it for my daily photo stuff. The only time I really use the OM1 outside of work is when I do birding with the 300 f4. Other than that, I rarely use it outside of work. I much rather take my Pen F, my EM5s, etc. Uh, this girl, I just got another text message. She thought today was Monday. She wanted to take me out for my birthday, but today's not Monday. Tomorrow's Monday. Okay, the anxiety is only there because people continue to spread the FUD. You told me what that meant. I forgot. We're almost 5 years in the JIP purchase and have the best bodies and lenses. That's an excellent point. I would agree. The OM systems are awesome. The OM1, the OM1 Mark II, the OM5, save for the USB-C port, but you know, uh, these are outstanding cameras. The TG7, outstanding compact camera for 500 bucks. I would buy this for 500, the new TG7 over say buying a used one of these for 300. Okay? This is crap compared to this. This shoots raw. This has a excellent f2.0 zoom lens in it. Anyway, I could go on, but yeah, Marco's right. Marco's right. That's the that's reality. They have excellent cameras and lenses. They just came out with that. I know it's a Sigma sort of remake, right? But that new 150 to 600 lens that came out is excellent, and they did a great job adapting that to the Micro Four Thirds system. Albeit a little pricey, but they did a great job. The 300 f4 has been out a while, but that's an excellent lens. The 150 to 400 didn't come out that long ago. Excellent lens. And then all of the kit lenses are great for the money. At the price point, they're excellent. All of the normal lenses, the 1.8 lenses, are excellent from OM Systems. And they're still in production. It's not like you're buying old stock, right? Um, 40 to 150, 12 to 100. I mean, there's such a great selection. It's such a mature system, and they're still in production, and you're getting excellent image quality out of them. I mean, there's very little downside to going into the OM systems now. Um, even knowing that they might, even if we knew for a fact that they were going to stop making cameras next year, I would not hesitate to buy any of their gear today. That's where I'm at, right? I'm not worried about 5 years from now if I need to upgrade my camera body. Uh, at that point, maybe 5 years from now, I might switch systems if I need to. I may not need to, right? Because really, I could still be using I bought the EM10 Mark II. It's finally died on me, but I bought that in 2015 or 2016. Yes, hold on. I don't know if you guys can hear the beeping. Okay. Uh, but yeah, I could have been using my EM10 Mark II up until about this year, when it died, for all of my professional work. It's just that good of a camera, with the exception of video. Video, definitely the OM1 was a game changer for me. And I hope Panasonic invests more in Micro Four Thirds as well. You know, having a variety of selection and user interfaces and look and feel of a camera, it makes a difference. Because my buddy Dave Tellett just bought a brand new OM1 for like $12.99 or something from OM Systems directly. He got some really good deal. He got the camera, put it with his 12100 because he owns the M1X and the OM10, I believe, or EM10, and he um he didn't like the OM1. He's not gelling with it, you know. Just nothing about the camera excites him. He bought it for the Starry Sky AF because he's going on a trip, and he really likes his EM1X and the EM10 that he has, but he just doesn't like the OM1. He's just not gelling with it, and I get that. Me personally, I guess you could say I don't really gel with it either for like everyday stuff. That's why I take my EM5 Mark II or Pen F out. I really love those cameras for photography or whatever other camera. I don't like taking the OM1 out for just everyday photography. I do like it for my professional work. In that case, it's really an excellent tool, and I love it for birds in flight. It's perfect. But, you know, yeah. And you're exactly right. Speculation doesn't help at all, but it does hurt because it plants the seed of failure. Yeah. Yeah, speculation doesn't help. I mean, I try not to speculate, but I understand where people are coming from when they worry about the future of a company. Um, Everyone seems to be concerned about long term, but many people buy new cameras every 1 to 2 years. I know, right? But we're talking about camera lenses. I mean, if people are buying cameras every 1 to 2 years, why would they care about a camera system going out of business? They're just going to buy a different one next year or 2 years. But I think it's people that are investing in the systems and accessories and the lenses, that those, because lenses last a long time. I'm using the kit lenses and other lenses that I bought 8 years ago today, right? And if I put those on a new camera system, new camera body, like my OM1, I only gain, right? So yeah, I think for people that are looking at it from the point of view of investing in a system with lenses, it could be a concern to them. And Sony sold their Vio laptop to JIP years ago. Vios is still in business today, but does business primarily in Asia. Yep. Yeah, they changed the business model, right, and marketing focus altogether. Because I guess they figured, they just can't compete here in the US. So they found a niche in Japan and made it work. Yeah, it sucks that Pana won't do small RF style camera. I buy used too, but those GXs are getting quite old and also rare. Yeah, I would love a GX1 in mint condition, but even if it's brand new out of the box, when electronics get old, they still deteriorate, particularly the capacitors, they deteriorate. Now, if they haven't been used, they still dry out, right? And Marcus says, start spreading positivity and helping the company understand the market and stop spreading unfounded rumors to boost Tony Northrup's ego. I know. All I can say is, I'm all in on OM systems, all in on Micro Four Thirds as secondary. Because whatever OM system produces, it's not just the fact that it's micro four thirds. It's the thought and design, the build quality, the features, everything that they do. I really, really like a lot. Right? I love the high res shot mode. I love the focus in camera focus stacking. Starry Sky AF. I love these features, even though I don't use them much. It's such a nice thing to have, and an option to have in the field when you don't necessarily bring a tripod. I'll use a tripod whenever I can, but I have the option not to, right? With the compromises therein, but it gives you options. I love the handling and feel of the cameras being so compact and lightweight and small. Uh, I love the button layout, the ergonomics. I think it's a very intuitive camera to use in terms of its ergonomics and the functions. And the menu system is a tough call, right? I've gotten used to it. I'm like a surgeon in the menu systems now, but with uh, the new OM1 camera system, people are finding more intuitive, and that's great. I still think it needs some work personally, but uh, I'm glad that they came out with a new menu system, and people are finding it easier to use. Um, so everything about OM systems, I'm just a fan. I'm a fan, and everyone knows I'm not paid. I'm just a fan channel, right, of OM systems camera, and to some extent to the Lumix cameras. Both their full frame and micro four thirds. But I own the Sony A7R5, the Fuji X-H2. I have a full frame Nikon, DSLR, and I shot Nikon for many years before switching to micro four thirds and full frame APS-C. And while the Nikon I think is very intuitive, very well made, ergonomically I put them on par with OM systems. It's a big system, full frame, right? Look at this thing. This is one of the smallest DSLR bodies from Nikon. And look at the size of this freaking lens. This is effectively a 1442 kit lens, right? This is a 24 to 85, f3.5 to 4.5. And I mean, this is a monster compared to uh I have all my cameras. I don't have any of my small cameras here, but there's no comparison. God forbid I put a 150 to 600 on here or any other lens, right? A 51.8. Not that I don't love this camera, and I don't mind carrying this. I mean, a lot of people don't mind it, right? But I much prefer a smaller camera system, which is why I got the LX100 Mark II. It's even smaller than micro four thirds interchangeable lens cameras, right? With a great lens. I'm gonna have to make some videos on that camera. I do like that camera a lot. Okay. And let's see. Hi, Rob. Greetings from the Netherlands. Hello, Angelo. Good to see you. And Robert is here. How are you, Robert? The lens options for the Sony mount, native and third party, and hard to ignore. Vis-a-vis options for Canon R and Nikon Z mounts. I would say Sony on the lens side is probably the most competitive with micro four thirds. Because they got in earlier than the Canon and Nikon, and a lot of third party support, and they're selling well. On the Canon side, they have a lot of catching up to do across the board, in my opinion. They do have some nice options for the RF mount, but that said, they are freaking pricey, very expensive. If you want the good stuff, right? You can get away with a few kit lenses. 24 to 105 is like an f4 to f7 or something. Whatever that cheap one is. They have um, they have a couple of kit lenses for their APS-C system, but for the most part, they they are very limited on the lower end in terms of pricing. Like if you had $1,000, you could probably buy 5 or 6 lenses for Micro Four Third, right? Uh, on the used market, you could buy at least 3 lenses. You can get the 25, the 45, and maybe the 12 at the current prices, because the 12 is going for 350, the 45 250. That's 600 plus the 25 is going for about 350. They're all on sale right now. But yeah, you can get 3 nice 1.8 primes on Micro Four Thirds for $1,000 or less. Get the camera, uh, get an OM5 for $1,000. So 2 grand, you're in with a great camera and 3 primes. Canon, on the other hand, let's think about, say, the Canon R8. Right now it's 1,300, and 3 primes on sale. They have a 50, which is 200. They have the 26, I think it is. That's about 3 or 400. And then they have, I don't think they have an 85 that's that cheap, but that's probably, let me look. Canon RF. I think this is where you get into trouble. They have an 85 f2 macro for 550, and they're 85. I'm looking at this. They're 85 1.2. Don't they have? They have an 85 f2. That's used. They don't have a 1.8. I guess this is it. So let's say 550 on sale. So yeah, you're just a hair over 2,000, I think, give or take. You could do a Canon R8 with those 3 primes. Let me double check the 26. I think it's a 26, 28. The 28 is 270 on sale. So 270, 200 plus, what was it? 550. So yeah, you're close to 1,000, right? So yeah, you're roughly Canon R8. Now the 28, 26 2.0, or the 28 2.8 and the 50 1.8, that's good. And then the 85 f2. So they're all pretty fast lenses on a Canon R8. That's not a bad setup, actually. But the 85 f2 is a pretty big lens, right? So you're going to need room for that. Whereas the 50 and the 28 are pretty compact. I think the 28 is almost pancake. That's not a bad little system. That's why I was looking at that a couple of times. And the grip that's not a bad system. But if you want to expand from there, outside of that, man, you're talking some serious money. As you saw, like the 85 1.2 is what, 2,600? The 24 to 72.8 is like another 2,600. I mean, it gets really expensive in Canon very quickly, and there's really no third-party options at this point. Sigma's starting to make some for their APS-C. But the bottom line is, Canon does not have the native lens selection. You can build out a much better Micro Four Thirds lens selection. Nikon Z, I'm not as familiar with the Z mount, but they are coming out with some nice lenses. They have the 85 that just came out, I think it was, and they have their 50-1.8 is like 600. The 85-1.8 is probably about the same price, and then they have a 35. You're at a much higher price point in the Nikon Z system, but it's all good stuff, right? And Robin says if M43 died, someone would probably make an adapter to use M43 lenses on APS-C cameras. You would still have micro four thirds image circle, which may even be more cropping options. Yeah, I don't think the image circle will be that much different though. I'm a little curious now. I'll have to just, lens whack a four thirds lens on my APS-C Fuji one day and see. May not be any problem at all if they could do it. The problem is the flange distance. The micro four thirds and most mirrorless cameras, the flange distance, there's only about a 1 or 2 millimeter difference. So depending on which direction the distance is, if it's positive or negative, is whether or not they can make an adapter of any kind. Primarily, it's the contacts are not going to be in the right place. And then the flange distance to maintain infinity focus. There's a lot of problems adapting mirrorless lenses to mirrorless cameras. Like I've seen adapters for using Canon, I think, on Nikon. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But I see where you're going. And Blaine says, camera YouTube comment is strange, man. You get big accounts that decide to bury a system and then you make a video asking if photography is dead. I don't know. I have to watch Tony again. I haven't watched his stuff in a while. Ironically, I still like Frono's photo though. Just like I like Casey at Camera Conspiracies. There's some entertainment value there with a little bit of actual interesting, actual useful information. But it's mostly for entertainment, right? Because it's kind of Fro's kind of more of a rumor guy on those news photos, news fix videos, and then Casey is just funny to watch, I think. Funny enough, Panasonic makes a dummy battery for the GH67. Do you know? Oh, okay. I didn't think they were a big deal. I used them too. Yeah. I don't think Olympus makes a dummy battery for any of their cameras. So I had to buy a third party, which is fine. They were 25 bucks, but the fact that the one is all broke apart is it's stressing me. And Chillster is here. Good to see you. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. Thank you. I don't know why I can't remember that. My memory's just not what it used to be. And this is for Marco. With multiple new features, that doesn't mean there's not R&D. It just means OM made the decision to launch with a mild update while they refine the next model. Yep. I mean, the cameras do more than I need most of the time. What I need really is, I would like to go to a 422 10-bit video instead of 420, just to get a little bit more extra color for grading. Because my problem is the reason grading is so important to me is when I'm doing my architectural stuff, video in particular, I get a lot of mixed lighting. And like I did this furniture place, and they were using tungsten lighting mixed with LED lighting, mixed with natural daylight. So I was getting yellow light, I was getting blue light, and I was getting natural light all mixed in together. And fluorescent lighting, which has a green tint to it. So I'm videoing, on a gimbal or on a trolley, whatever, video in these kind of lighting conditions for on a budget. They're not paying me enough to bring in my own lighting to light up this whole freaking place. Uh, and I mean, not even enough for me to go rent lighting. And I would need an assistant. I could not handle the kind of lighting I would need to illuminate a place like that properly. Because think about, like, if you ever watch the news and you see over the head of the studio, sometimes they do these wide shots of the studio. Look at how much lighting. Really look at how much lighting they're using. It's a boatload, right? And they do that because You have to, basically. But this is what I'm dealing with. So that's why when we went to 10-bit, it made a big deal. I get a little more dynamic range and a little bit deeper coloring. The coloring is a little bit easier to work with, but it's primarily the dynamic range. But if we went to 422 color, I would definitely be able to tweak these minor tints and hues and problems that I'm having in mixed lighting situation. Um, yeah, so I'd like to see 422 10-bit, but maintain 4K 60. 4K is more than enough. I deliver 1080p when it comes to video, but somebody might want a 4K video. And if people are wanting me to deliver 4K video, I probably want to shoot an 8K because it gives the obvious cropping ability, but there's certain image quality benefits to not compressing. What's the word I'm looking for? Um, interpolating 6K to 4K or 8K to 4K. So if they came out with a 6K camera, 422 10-bit, which exists now in the G9 Mark II. If I can get a good deal on one for less than 1,000, I might get one just for the video side. But I don't know. But then I can get an S5. You go down that rabbit hole, right? So I'm thinking maybe I just wait until I get um, until OM System makes the camera I really want. Um, but an S5, the G9 Mark II, it's mildly tempting. If I was doing video work all the time, I'd probably go to an S5 Mark II. I'm just not doing enough to justify a G9 Mark II. But anyway, okay. Uh, OM System in a perfect position to own the small XF100 type market. They would just do it. Yeah, you would think. Um, yeah, they're investing a lot. JIP is investing a lot of time and money into OM systems, so I think their intent is definitely to make it profitable. John Click says, just because OM system isn't winning the US big market, it doesn't mean they won't sell well in other cultures and countries. True. Like, I think a lot of the pen lines sold extremely well in Asia or in other countries. That's why the EP7 you can really only get brand new overseas. I looked at uh, buying one from the UK recently, and I said, I don't need it. And then Angela says, the issue is not bodies, but lenses. When a company goes out of business, if you have all the lenses you need, there's no problem. For someone entering the system, this is important. Uh, for somebody serious about it, yeah. Most people are not that serious. They're not looking at all the different lenses. Absolute beginners to photography, they walk in, they buy, and I talked about this in the beginning. They buy the camera and a kit lens and maybe one other lens, and that's it forever. They're buying mainly on a recommendation from someone else. For people like us, oh, excuse me, for people like us, we're looking at the entire camera system, and that's why I've never had a want. There's no lenses that I can't get from Micro Four Thirds, right? Meaning I can get anything I want or need out of Micro Four Thirds. They have everything. It's not to say they can't still add more, right? A lot of people want weather sealed 1.8s. I'm not looking for that, but a lot of people are. And the OM5 is still a great camera in its own right, especially for someone just getting an MFT paired with 12 to 45 f4 or the 20 f1.4. It's a great, absolutely. It is an amazing camera. I mean, it has everything. I mean, I got enough cameras that I can be really picky about my next camera. But if I didn't have any camera or wanted to upgrade from, say, my EM10, if that's been my only camera, I would have no problem. I would have an OM1 right now or an OM5 right now, no question. Um, and yeah, lenses are forever. I'm still using 70-year-old film camera lenses on modern. Yep, absolutely. And nobody is saying Pentax is dead, and that company has much smaller market share, which is a relatively new company, but frankly, market share doesn't matter if you enjoy that system. Yeah, exactly. It's like I still have a Minolta SRT 101, and I've only shot one roll of film in it, but I loved it. I loved it. And Minolta's been out of business forever, right? And some of the Sony APS-C, you can find small cameras, pretty nice smallish lenses at the short end, including some from Sigma, tend to be more video focus. Yeah, there's some nice APS-C lenses. Like I like their 10 to 18, I think it is, and they have an 18 to 50, I think, 2.8, relatively small, very fast, nice and sharp. Uh, so yeah, APS-C would be probably my next step. Like I really like my 18 to 55 on my Fuji. You know, it's the kit lens, right? It's a 2.8 to f4. So there's some nice systems. You know, Sony certainly is. You know, there's a really awesome selection. I couldn't want for more as far as lens selection from the Sony E mount. There's plenty, and there's third parties coming out dirt cheap for Sony too, and to some extent Fuji and Nikon for their APS-Cs. And let's not forget there are any number of good third-party lenses for MFT, some of them very good. Don't shy away from exploring non. Yep. I wish there were more though, more autofocus third party. There's just not enough there yet. I wish there were more. I mean, I really like the Sigma 16, 30, and 50, 54. There's a 56, right? I don't own any of those for my Olympus, but those are great options, third party. If you're going to start with third party, those are great options when it comes to autofocus. If you don't care about autofocus, there's so many great lenses. Absolutely. And John says, I found over the years that I only really need a 35 millimeter equivalent and a decent telephoto zoom. The smaller, the better. Most systems have that. Yep. And Angela says, Digital Solutions is focused heavily with till ambassadors in the Europe market. Okay. Their YouTube channels post every week at least two videos about their cameras, lenses, and wildlife. Yeah, they're definitely very active on the YouTube side. And I'm a big fan of Micro Four Thirds or OM systems. I don't really produce as much content as I used to though. I'm doing a lot of these live streams. Uh, Here with a bit of luck, you could get a 25 and an 18 and a 45 and a 75. Oh, yeah, so you can get, yeah, you could get on the used market, certainly those four. And those are all excellent lenses. I could be very happy with only my EM1 Mark III and 12 to 45. Yep, pretty much covered. I mean, you know, a lot of people, that's all you need is your body and two lenses, and you can do just about everything you'd want to do. Rob, you are already in the M43 system. For video, you can use the GH7. Yeah, it has the 422 10-bit with standard profile and also vlog profile. Yeah. I thought about it. Trust me, I thought about actually the GH6 because I saw one for sale for less than $1,000, which was, and it was basically brand new. Because I don't need the autofocus for the video work that I do. You know, I just set it to f8 and uh, sometimes f5.6 and lock the focus. Because again, we have such great depth of field. I've thought about it. Trust me, I've thought about it. Uh, just maybe even a GH5, but I don't think it has 4K 60. I'll have to double check. Because the GH5 you can get around 500 or 600 bucks, and that would be if that has 4K 60 and 10-bit, I would be set with 422. I'm sure it has 422 10-bit. I just don't know if it's 4K 60. And low cost camera deal, EM1 Mark II for 400. Original 4/3 lens is 1454 for 100 bucks. Okay. And 4150 f3.5 to 4.5 for 50. That's if you're talking about 4/3 lenses, yeah. But the 40 to 150, I haven't seen for less than 100. 7300. Okay, so yeah, you're talking all 4/3 lenses with the adapter, all in. PDAF works well with the original 4/3 lenses. Wow. You could. I'm just not a fan of the adapter. It's just making the lenses bigger than they need to be. I think it's worth spending a little more to get the native 4/3 lenses. Because you can get a kit 14 to 42 for 100 bucks easily. You can get the kit 40 to 150 for about 100 to $120. And then you can get the 75 to 300, but that's going to be about 400. That's where the money's going to go. So it looks like, yeah, you would be about $400 higher to go all native because of that one lens. But I think it's definitely worth it. If you ever get the opportunity to look at Topaz Video AI software, I now use this for my video work. I downloaded the demo last week, and I'm not sure I'm getting better results from it. Since I had one clip that was really messed up, and I didn't have time to render because I had like 30 seconds of video, and it was going to take like 2 hours to render it using that video AI. But I'm looking into it. I'm looking into it. It's interesting. It did do a good job, but I'm thinking, is it really better than what I could do using DaVinci Resolve? Because DaVinci has a pretty good uh, noise reduction and sharpening tool. It's not AI sharpening, it's just your slider sharpening type. And I compared that with a quick render I did using video AI. But I think if yeah, I'm trying it. I'm working on it. We'll see. We'll see if I can get better results. Because if it does do a better job, then it's only 250 bucks or something. It's not that expensive. So if it does a better job than DaVinci in terms of processing, right? I would have to use it as a preprocessor. But yeah, I know it didn't make any difference on if I already rendered it in DaVinci and then I re-rendered it using video AI. It was quick, but it didn't make any difference. You know, it didn't sharpen it really anymore or reduce the noise anymore. But I found when I was editing the raw image, right, the original video file, it seemed like it was doing a little better job. But the rendering times, oh my God, they were outrageous. It's like hours to render just a few minutes of video. Whereas, in DaVinci, I can render in like, anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes to render a 2-minute video. I'm up. Holy shit. I'm up to, man, I got a lot going on today too. I gotta go. Uh, thanks for letting me know. I didn't realize I was just jibber jabber. When you start talking with friends, you just don't realize how long it's been. Uh, yeah, so you pre-process, right? The video AI? Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, but then I tried to use it, um, I tried to see if it would do a good job, but it was taking too long to render, so I just stopped and delivered the files that I had. Because if it didn't take so long to render and it did a better job, I would have bought it, get rid of the watermark, and then used it for this last video job that I had. But I just didn't have time. So I'll have to spend some time next week with it. But you guys, thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your week. And yeah, I really have to go. So thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.